allegedly protection.
That's why I think it's interesting is that I'm seeing a lot of very bold, bald-faced assertions not being couched with any sort of disclaimer language of like, oh, it looks like this is what's happening to me. I mean, people are just asserting like, oh, Elon hates me and struck out against me. And if it turns out they did violate terms of service, I mean, that could turn out to be a problem, like depending on how litigious X or Elon, feel like.
And arbitration.
Yeah, you have to actually go sit in front of the guy and have their lawyers there, your lawyers there. And judge will be like, yeah, shut the fuck up,
I think it's very interesting that you bring up that case, though, because the conspiracy theory that Adrian is Elon, right, also a lie, mm-hmm. And these people are boldly asserting it, and I've said it once before, I'll say it again, the world is lucky that Adrian does not have worse intentions, right? Because
Adrian, oh, dude, 100%.
As a private, non-famous individual, Adrian is entitled to a much higher standard of protection from defamation than somebody like Elon, who is famous, where there's a little bit more leniency for the press and for private people to just kind of say what they want. And so I think
wasn't that the case with the Covington kids, where they basically lied and smeared them, and they all the news companies had to settle with them.
Not familiar with that specific case, but
the one where the kid was wearing a MAGA hat and this native guy was coming in.
Oh yeah. That I remember that case. Yep, that was Covington Catholic High School. The kid was participating in a MAGA march. It was peaceful. This very well-known Native American agitator showed up, sort of yelling in their faces. And they claimed falsely, all the media reporters claimed that the kid was intimidating him with a smile. And he sued them. And I believe he managed to get a settlement out of it.
Yeah, he managed
to didn't win, but he got a settlement. Yeah.
No, but
wasn't CNN the main issue on it?
Oh, no, yeah. All of them were.
So,
but,
he
said he got settlements out of it. Because he was
unfortunately, the lawyer is a nut job.
Yeah, because
the lawyer who... Yeah.
Because he was
the guy
who promoted
individual.
But I know, but there's two types. I know because I asked, because I just graduated last May, and I know because I asked one of my professors about this, just for my purposes. There's two types of public figures. There's limited purpose public figures and general purpose public figures. And I think, like, for example, I don't think, like, for Adrian's purposes, if they were to expose something or like make up something about about an aspect of his life that is not pertinent to his activity on the platform, then there'd be the lower threshold of proof required. There'd be the higher standard of proof required, because for that purposes they would be spreading lies about an aspect of his character that is not necessarily within the nexus of his activities on the platform. But
what I would ask is, what's pertinent about it other than that Adrian sounds like Elon, which is subjective?
How did the libs of TikTok thing work out? Because she was not a public figure, right? She just ran this account.
It's not, no.
And then it was just leaked through like a quote-unquote investigative journalist thing. Like, how exactly does that work?
That's a good question. I'm asking Brock. Forgot about that case. Like, I'm not sure.
I don't necessarily think that for purposes of like trying to assert somebody's private identity, that it would necessarily matter, like in this context, that Adrian is sort of a well-known person on X. I don't think that would be too relevant to the conversation of whether it's okay to falsely assert who he is privately when he has been very openly asserting that that's not the case himself. Like, everyone has reason to know better at this point.
But then, like, if it was determined that that question of whether Adrian is the same person as another person in the platform, that question would be like, okay, well, is Adrian's identity as being Elon or not being Elon, is that within the range of like where his I guess like public interaction, or within the range of his public interaction for the purpose of him being a limited public figure, but because like I think when you're a public figure, it's true malice is required, and so you'd have to prove that the speaker was like knew it was false. I believe there's two prongs. They knew it was false, or they had reason to believe it was false, and then in spreading that falsehood, they had malice. But it's been a long time since I looked at that. So,
But that's just with public figures, right? Not private individuals.
yes, but the question, so it's two pronged.
Yeah.
It's if they're a limited public figure, does the way is the falsehood related to their related to their activities as a public figure? And then if yes, then that higher standard is applied, which means true malice.
I mean, I think there's a very interesting question about whether a private person could be a public figure at all if they're not doxxed.
Yes, because that's why I asked my professor, because as far as I know, it has not been actually like litigated yet.
Yeah, and I'm not a defamation attorney. I don't want to get into details about my work necessarily. I it is within the sphere of things that I work on, but I don't litigate that.
Oh, and since we're still on the topic of lawyers, it was explained to me by the British lawyer, I'm just going to call him that the reason why they get mad about this stuff, right, about being called lawyers instead of, say, barristers or solicitors, is because, and he said it's mostly solicitors who get mad about this stuff, not so much barristers, because solicitors are a higher caste in society.
Well,
at a higher tier of society.
I believe there is a distinction between solicitors and barristers that has to do with what court they're allowed to practice in, although your friend could probably confirm.
I've explicitly been told, I don't remember if it was a barrister or solicitor or whatever, that I am I think he was a solicitor.
I was the other way around. Sorry, it's barristers that get bent out of shape. Yeah, I'll just read what he said. He says it's barristers that get bent out of shape because they have a higher social rank than solicitors.
Right. I think it might have been barrister there then.
Yeah,
he was
barristers,
like,
not
I'm
solicitors.
a barrister, not a solicitor. Like trying to prove how good of a lawyer he is, basically. I remember someone explicitly telling me that.
Wait until you run into the KCs, King's Counsel.
Well, actually, the thing I hated the most about the UK laws with that are that you have to end up hiring a barrister and a solicitor typically for a retainer. You can't just go with one or the other.
He explained it here. He says, barristers have the higher social rank. Barristers have higher rights of audience in the higher courts. Solicitors can get it, but it takes effort. That explains a lot.
So is it like a completely different process, or you first become a solicitor, then you upgrade, or what is it? Is it like you start in the beginning like a doctor and a nurse, or is it like...
That's a good question. Let's see what he says.
Yeah, I mean, does he want to come up and talk about it? That could be fun.
Yeah, if you want to come up, we can invite you. Just say yes and
What's
hit
what's
in the
his
DMs.
what's his account? You would need to.
Hold on. Yeah, maybe he wants to be anonymous. Let's see.
Absolutely respect anyone's rights to be anonymous.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. If he wants to come up, I will tell you his name.
Okay.
Do you want to come up? He's like typing slowly. I'll take that as a yes. Okay, he said, why not? His name is Preston Byrne. Yeah, he said, let's do it.
I don't see him.
So, Preston,
I see,
apply
I
to
see.
be a speaker. You see him? Okay, cool. That's better than speaking to a filter, an intermediary, a layer, a translation layer.
And solicitors?
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Cool. So the English system had traditionally has had multiple classes of lawyers. And what happened was in the United States, all of those professions fused into one. And that's something which you tend to see in a lot of other common law jurisdictions. So in England, traditionally you had attorneys that were the lowest ranking lawyers. You then had solicitors who practiced in the courts of equity. Excuse me.
Okay, that explains.
And then the barristers practiced in the higher courts and the courts of equity. And so what happened was attorneys and solicitors fused, I think, in the late 1700s, and barristers and solicitors have remained separate. Now, what happens is there are two separate and basically mutually exclusive pathways if you want to. And I'm a solicitor in England, and I'm also an attorney in the United States. So I trained and qualified over there, but I grew up in the U.S. and became an immigrant. So obviously I have lots of opinions on H-1Bs because I once was, in fact, a highly skilled immigrant. But that's
Nice.
a conversation for another time. But yeah, so basically you start out, you go to school, you go to university, then you have your pathway. You can alternate, do one or the other. You either do what's called the bar professional practice course or the legal practice course. And depending on after you have your legal qualifications in order, so that's either a law degree or a law conversion degree, you then have to do the vocational course for either subject. And then barristers do a year-long work experience or apprenticeship called a pupillage, and solicitors have to do a 2-year apprenticeship called a training contract that used to be called articles of clerkship. And then after all that is done, basically you need to get another lawyer to go. There's no bar exam, or at least they've just introduced one now. There hasn't been one for the last couple hundred years. And then what happens is some senior solicitor blesses you, they run a criminal background check, and you're in. But once you're in one category, you can't cross over to the other. It does happen very rarely that you get solicitors who requalify as barristers, or solicitors who then go and get higher rights of audience, which they can do through, it's like a 2-week training course, but then you have to actually go build a practice to do it. And in practice, it never happens because the barristers, it's just very strange. It's more of an academic discipline than a solicitor would, than a solicitor's job is. Solicitors tend to be more about preparing trial bundles, thinking things like that. Barristers are more about doing legal research, civil procedure, and various other things of that nature, like legal opinions. So generally speaking, you don't.
Is it closer to like a paralegal or like?
No, they're both lawyers. I mean, I would say a barrister is a specialist in trial court advocacy, right? Specifically in higher courts. So it's high court, court of appeal, Supreme Court.
Okay.
So they go to, that's what they do. And solicitors do everything else. And sometimes they do that, but the barristers, generally speaking,
Right.
got to be blunt, they got better grades and they're smarter. And so those are the kinds of people who generally work solo. I'm being completely blunt about it. Some of the barristers you meet are just absolute rocket scientists.
Great that you're bringing up getting better grades, because I'm very curious about what the law school process is like in the UK. I mean, do they get to go into it at an earlier stage in their education? How does it work?
Yeah, so you can do it one of two ways. Either you can do it as an undergraduate discipline, in which case you're taking your final law exams when you're like 20 years old. I had a guy he started working at the firm when he was 21. One of my friends started working at the firm when she was 22, which is when most people are actually graduating. So it's a 3-year undergraduate course. Or after you're done with your undergraduate in another discipline, what you do is you take a 1-year so-called law conversion course, where you do a 1-year accelerated black letter law in the core subjects, and then you move on to your vocational year after that. So in total, for a solicitor, you're looking at, if you do it undergraduate, it's 1, 2, 3 years undergraduate, 4 vocational, and then 2 more in training. So that's a total of 6. If you do it as a post-grad, it's total of 4 years of law training before you're admitted. And then if you're a barrister, you just knock 1 year off that. So it's either 3 years or 5 years.
I think now it makes sense to me why the lawyers in the UK were so offended to be called attorneys. Because
I think it's a social thing. Like if you look at, I don't really, lawyer is not a protected term over there. So like,
Right.
It's not, you can run around and call yourself a lawyer if you're a law professor, right? So it's not like in the US, if you run around calling yourself a lawyer. I had a friend who is now actually admitted to practice, and he's one of the best guys in crypto law. And for a while, people used to snipe at him because he hadn't passed a bar exam, but he was describing himself as a crypto lawyer. And like, he's really, really good. So he finally said, fuck you guys, like, pardon my French. And he went and passed the bar first attempt and shut everybody up.
Did he get a JD?
Yeah, he got a JD from like NYU, I think.
Right.
So like really, really respectable. And then he went and did think tank stuff and was just like, I can't be bothered with law practice because it sucks, which is true, generally speaking. So yeah, I mean, so that's what I would say is that some barristers get a little worked up about it now, if like they're particularly socially sensitive. If you say, oh, you're a lawyer, like, no, I'm a barrister.
Yeah.
Most barristers and solicitors I work with, like, just don't care, because it's all the same job at this point anyway. It's just a question of who goes into court and who doesn't. So
the first time I heard solicitor and barrister, I was so confused. I thought I was like a dumbass that didn't know like lawyer terms because I had never heard it before, but turns out it's just a UK thing.
Yeah, it's fun when you're a solicitor and you come back home and then you go like meet some of your parents' friends, and they go, "Oh, you're a lawyer in the UK." You go, "Yeah, I'm a lawyer over there." And they say, "So you're a barrister?" And you go, "No, I'm a solicitor actually." And then their face just like drops, because in America, of course, soliciting means something very different. So like, or you walk up outside of a Walmart and there's a sign that says "No soliciting." Right. It's pretty funny. But like, it's great. Like, I love being a solicitor. It's fun because it's really client facing. And it's the UK bar is a really collegial group of people. It's much less political than the American bar. You don't tend to get like some of those figures like you see in the periphery of the Trump administration, the incoming one, like, or even the Democrats. You don't like get a Mark Elias type figure over there, because ultimately you don't have a fully independent judiciary with a constitutional function. So it's really depoliticized. So yeah, it's a cool profession. It's a cool group of people. If you say solicitor or barrister and you're American and you're not from over there, like, no one's going to hold it against you for not understanding that particular quirk of the system. So don't sweat it.
You're all like high IQ individuals. You're not going to get mad about it.
Well, I'm a solicitor. I'm one of the dumb ones. So.
Get the fuck out of here. We don't like the kind.
Only barristers allowed in this room.
Exactly, only barristers.
Preston, you seem more fun than most attorneys.
Well, I try to be. So in terms of like what I do, I do crypto stuff and social media actually. So Ian and I have corresponded on this for a really long time. And I was active in the social media space with the free speech companies that before X came along and decided to, absolutely just revolutionize the way the internet worked and what you could say in polite society without getting, permanently banned from every web platform. So like, yeah, no, I basically have my own little solo practice. I work out of my house. It's pretty great. Have a bunch of little clients, and some small, some big. One client that everyone knows I have because I'm a deputy GC at is a company called Arkham, which is a crypto company that just launched a crypto exchange. But yeah, no, I'm pretty chill, pretty relaxed. I don't really play well with other law firm lawyers in a law firm setting, because the politics, and in particular like hitting targets, is really just not like and artificially being like, great, you've got a bunch of startup clients, like how are you going to milk them for 200 hours of billables a month? And it's like, well, they're startup clients. They don't have money. Like, I can't be sending them bills at $1,000 an hour. So I went solo. I now, of course, bill considerably less. And as a result, I can have a lot more
By
contact
the way,
with my clients.
that's the main reason why people really hate lawyers, specifically because of that practice.
Yeah. And
Expensive.
you're expected to like nickel and dime over emails or phone calls or, anything that's like someone sends you an email, you spend, 2 seconds looking at it, the answer. The firm's response is like, okay, cool. Why don't you like take a half an hour or 45 minutes, like write up, I don't know, write up a memo about your phone call, do some research after the phone call, then do another half an hour to write up a research memo, attach it to the email to the client instead of saying, yeah, this is fine, and taking 2 seconds and like not recording it. So like, the question for me was like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to sit here on the treadmill and like keep, treading? Literally, it's like, the wheel at the beginning of Conan, right? So like Arnold Schwarzenegger's thing, they're pushing the wheel. You should do that. Like at the start of your career, it will turn you into Conan if you do that and you push enough. But like eventually you got to get off the wheel, right? And you got to go become the king. And like, how are you going to do that? You're not going to do it by staying on the wheel. And that's something that I think a lot of lawyers do. And I think they then wake up when they're 55, 60 years old and say, where the hell did my life go? What have I accomplished with it? Because I grew up in a family of lawyers. And all of us, or some of us were in big law as well, including my father before me. So like, I'm very familiar with the treadmill, and I was very eager to get off of it, much as my father was, and that's what I've done. So it's cool. Like, it's a very relaxed
Is your father also a solicitor?
He was a lawyer, interesting guy. He was an attorney at Cravath, but he's not like the typical. Cravath's this very sophisticated white shoe operation in Manhattan. But he was a child of Scottish immigrants. His father was a janitor, and he went to Fordham and put his way through by being a short order cook. So it's that kind of, he's really like a grinder, and that's how he got in, which is cool. So I don't work nearly as hard as he ever did. I'm a lazy son of a bitch. So yeah.
That's awesome.
I feel like I know too many lawyers, like you're familiar with Ron Coleman, Will Chamberlain.
Yeah.
Adele Nazarian did a bit of law before, but she's not a lawyer, right? She went to like school for it, and she trained under Ron Coleman. Like, it's cool. I know so many lawyers. It's awesome.
Ron's I've actually had some productive conversations with Ron. And there were a couple of people on X who, when you see them on X and you see them tweeting and you're just like, what the hell? There's a lawyer on Twitter. This is a recipe for disaster. But Ron's really cool. I've had some light correspondence with Harmeet Dillon in the past.
Great.
She's fantastic. And so she's just totally wonderful. And it's fantastic that she's got a job in the Trump administration. So there's a lot of bullshitters in legal Twitter, but like there are a lot of people who are legal X, but there are a lot of people who are really solid, and they just happen to know how to run a popular social media account without shooting themselves in the foot. And it's good for that.
The thing about lawyers is, if they're good, they're really fucking smart, and you want to talk to them some more. You can learn so much.
And if they're good, they don't fuck you over.
Correct. They're honest. They have to be. They know what the deal is.
Yeah.
I really think that, something Preston said should be highlighted. He went out and he went solo. Like, if you are looking for legal services, looking for those mid-size or solo practices that are experts in the sort of work that you're looking for, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a much better deal for you and a much better experience overall. The way that law firms pay attorneys should be considered a war crime against both the attorneys and the clients. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I see a lot
you're
of
a partner at the firm, right?
Well,
yeah, that's a different.
Depends on the partner. Yeah, it depends on the partner. I think one thing that happens a lot of the time is a startup will go to one of these big law firms. They won't necessarily have a well-developed in-house function. And they'll say, hey, we need advice on this. And like a law firm is willing to spin its wheels, like answering how many angels can fit on the head of a pin. They'll do that forever, right? If you allow it. And so what you need to do is you need to kind of corral them and say, no, like here's your budget. Like we need a ballpark answer. Like, can we do X, and will we go to prison if we do or don't do X? And if the answer to the prison question is negative, then generally speaking, that's an indication that you can proceed, right? But you have to just fully advise the client of what the risks are. Potentially there's civil things, obviously, if you're dealing with like a civil regulatory issue with the SEC or the CFTC, that's obviously something which is a little more severe than, oh, well, your litigation risk is higher than not. So what I see a lot of is that small companies, especially in crypto, they'll go to big law firms. The big law firms will just sit there and go, oh, this is a huge project. They'll throw 12 lawyers at it. You'll be on a phone call. There'll be 6 partners billing out at $1,800 an hour. It's just so inefficient. And yeah, like if you can get to yes more quickly, then you can reduce. And I think like stuff like Grok, I've been using Grok and ChatGPT to solve some legal issues lately. I'm dealing with a European government at the moment. I'm a citizen of a particular European country, and they somehow managed to lose the fact that I'm a citizen of that country. So I had to figure out how to serve like this weird ass statutory demand on the office in the city where my birth was registered, and then deal with the consulate. And I used ChatGPT to do it, and it just like sped up the process so quickly, where you could see that if this had happened 15 years ago, I'd have to go to Italy, hire an avocado. I'm sorry, well, now you know the country. Whoops. But I don't have to go to Italy, like dealing with the Italian bureaucracy. Like you can either hire
nightmare.
Yeah, total nightmare. But really, like this AI stuff is making it so much faster. Not because you should have it writing your briefs, right? If you do that, there have already been lawyers who got in trouble for doing that. But it speeds up the administrative process of formatting documents, amending documents. Eventually, they're going to turn this on version control. There's like a thing lawyers do called I call it document tennis, where they bat back and forth like 400 pages of legal documents on things like securitizations or syndicated loans. And it costs millions of dollars. And securitizations will routinely run like $15 or $20 million in legal fees just to do $1 billion, $1.5 billion of assets. That's like what, 200, 300 bips you're spending on legal. And most of it is just version control, which is being managed by humans, with one human managing each document on a huge deal, right? Something like that. And that's all going to go away because you're just going to be able to go through it and you're going to say, AI, okay, cool. Like I've made these amendments to this one document. Could you please scan the rest of the documents? And could you tell me if there are any breaking changes so that I can go through it and review it myself? So instead of having a team of 10 people to do this, you could do it with a team of 1 or 2. And most of the labor that's going to get shaved off is going to be junior associate labor. So what you'll wind up happening is lawyers everywhere, I think, will wind up being more like those British barristers, right? It'll be the rocket scientists who can sit there and manage the AI and know all the pieces of the deal, by hand. And you're not going to need a lot of the grunt work, which is charged out at the equivalent rates, but creates a lot of overhead for the business. So it's a really interesting time to be a lawyer, particularly, and I think those big law firms are toast in the very near future, just as soon as the tech gets good enough that solos like me can leverage it to do bigger deals that currently we don't have the capacity to do.
AI assisted discovery is just going to be so incredible. Game changer.
Do you guys know what discovery is? Non-lawyers?
Yeah, I think it's when you go and look for previous cases, right, that have already happened, right?
No,
it's yeah, go ahead.
It's the exchange of evidence between parties leading up to litigation.
Oh, that one. That one. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
That's where all the dirt comes out.
I worked on a case. It was a cartel case in Europe, and I wasn't like a cartel lawyer, right? I was a junior lawyer on a much bigger team. And it was a cartel case in the automotive industry. And so I can't tell you too much about it without revealing, who I was actually working for. But the task of discovery in that was an internal investigation for the purpose of complying with a regulatory investigation by the European Competition Commission and the UK, Competition Commission and the UK Competition Commission for basically unlawful collusion. And the task of discovery in the hands of the junior lawyer being charged out at £500 an hour was to read emails from auto industry executives and clicking relevant, not relevant, or maybe relevant, right? And then, but you were reading literally a million emails that were sitting on the servers, and you were going through trying to discover the needle in the haystack and find everything relevant. And you had teams, right, of lawyers and paralegals doing this. And so it was like when that exercise, I think it was in my second 6 months as a trainee, when I was doing that, was so soul destroying that I was like, I'm not doing litigation. I'd like, this sucks. I never want to do this again. But like, that's the kind of stuff that AI is just going to eliminate, because it can give you the answer in 5 seconds. Where, I mean, I think you could probably have measured you could have measured the human time invested in that exercise on that particular issue.
It's painful
in years, like decades. So.
Some big companies, right, when they're trying to sue a smaller company, they usually kill them in discovery. They just shove, gigabytes upon gigabytes of emails that are irrelevant to the case in order to bog down the other team, because they know that the other team doesn't have the resources to hire too many lawyers to go through these emails, right, or pieces of data or whatever. And that's usually how they shut them down. They just bog them in papers upon papers upon papers during discovery. Now, in this one case of Valve v. Vivendi, it's this French company. They owned the rights to like Half-Life or something, right? And Valve Studios, Valve Software, which now owns Steam, one of the biggest video game companies in the world, it's like worth billions now. Well, they own Half-Life, but the problem is Vivendi had the rights to their online game, like Counter-Strike, right? Their service, and they were licensing it illegally to Korean cyber cafes, right? They're raking hand over fist for this, right? Like they're just making millions of dollars that Valve is not seeing. And Valve was like, hey, this is our property. You're licensing this out illegally, and we want it back, right? We want the rights back to this thing, and you can't do this anymore. And so they sued them. Actually, it was the other way around. The other guy sued them. The other guy sued them. Vivendi sued them and said that, no, this is our right, and basically tried to fuck them over with discovery by sending so many emails. Now, fortunately, a guy at Valve could actually speak native Korean, and he saw those emails, and it just so happened by chance that he came upon this email with the executives at that company discussing how to delete evidence that they were of what they were doing, right?
Wow.
And that came out during discovery, and immediately, the other guys dropped the case. They knew they'd lost, right?
Correct.
And Valve countersued and won.
Destruction of evidence in litigation, it's called expoliation. It's one of the most serious things you can do to fuck up your litigation. It will basically, like, not only will you likely face very serious penalties for doing so if the attorney involved knew about it or was involved in it somehow, probably going to be disbarred or at least suspended. But expoliation will allow the court or jury potentially to make any negative inferences based on any information that is missing or alleged to be missing. Really, really devastates somebody's legal case in a lot of ways.
Yep, don't do it. Don't become Vivendi. They don't exist anymore. Oh, and by the way, they were forced to publish Valve's game, Half-Life 2. That's part of the settlement. Good times.
So,
Wow.
what if
It happens.
what if a company isn't destroying evidence, but they just don't have good record keeping?
I mean, if you don't know that you're going to be subject to litigation, if you have no reason to think that the records involved would be evidence in litigation, and the company has poor record keeping, it could be a legal compliance issue in other ways, but it wouldn't be considered expoliation.
Right.
But once you know that you're going to be subject to litigation, there's actually a responsibility to identify the relevant evidence that's within your possession, and make sure that you're doing things to prevent its destruction or deletion. And so you're not necessarily off the hook if you already know and you still are keeping your bad data practices and you allow data to be destroyed negligently after that point.
Makes sense. So you have to show that you knew that you were committing a crime.
Well, it's not a crime. It's just like, I mean, it can be a crime if you're trying to obstruct justice, if you're perjuring yourself. But
Mhm.
it's more usually where you see it is that you get sanctions, right? And potentially case-ending sanctions, depending on how bad it is. In the UK, it's a slightly different picture because we don't have like interrogatories in the UK. The rule over there is that you've got to do it's all cards on the table, so you have to disclose all evidence which is both helpful to your case and evidence which is helpful to the other side's case. So it's pretty bad if you do that. But you know, it's generally speaking, it's not a criminal matter. Spoliation isn't a criminal matter; it's a civil matter.
Okay. Unless it's a criminal case, right? Like
If
a
it's a
murder.
criminal case, yeah, spoliation in a criminal proceeding is known as obstruction or perversion of the course of justice in the UK. So,
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, I figured it would be illegal to, go and delete emails saying that, or your browser history or something, assuming you were going to commit a crime.
they get people on that all the time. Like someone wipes their browser history and it's recoverable, and because they know they're under investigation, and they'll be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, cool." Or you lie to a cop, or you say something incorrect to a police officer. That's why lawyers tell you never to talk to the police. It's not because
It's
like,
illegal to lie to a cop, right? It's illegal.
well, like it's not like we can't talk to the police for you. Like that's what we're there for. So like if you did something bad
Right.
and you come to a lawyer and you're like, I did something bad, like I'm toast. Like lawyers can go and have those conversations, and you can do deals and you can have those chats. The problem is you say something and lawyer says, where were you on Wednesday night? And you go, gee, I'm not sure. I think it was at my girlfriend's place. And it turns out you weren't there. You were at McDonald's, but your recollection was imperfect because, I don't know, you were smoking ayahuasca or something at McDonald's. Like whatever, like any reason. And then they turn around and they go, cool, like that's an obstruction charge. And, because you lied in order to mislead this criminal investigation. So it's people just get themselves into trouble. It's if you committed a crime, like I'm not a criminal lawyer by any stretch, but like generally speaking, if you committed a crime and you're under investigation, it's in your interest to hire a lawyer who knows how to deal with this stuff and go talk to the cops through them, right? Not necessarily yourself. But that's where people get into trouble. It's just on little mistakes that they make along the way. And of course, you can make incriminating, you can make all kinds of incriminating statements, and you might do things that might weaken your position, and you might not know that the search was illegal, and that's something that a professional can parse that you can't. But yeah, that's
Yeah. What about countries where, I think there's some European countries, I think Italy's one of them, where you don't have a right to an attorney for like the first 24 hours. And they can essentially interview you. Yeah.
That's basically, I'm not familiar with the continental regimes. I do know that the U.S. is procedural protections are generally speaking stronger than those in Europe. In the UK, for example, you don't have a right against self-incrimination, which is like, to an American, you tell that to an American, they're just like, are you kidding? So you like if you're silent, they can draw adverse inferences from your silence if you're presented with question. I still think it's in your interest, generally speaking, if you're in a police station without a lawyer, not to talk and then try to correct the record later. But if you attempt that strategy in England, then what happens is they can use that silence against you later. So essentially, yes, they can question you without a lawyer present, and if you refuse to participate in the interrogation, then they can use the silence against you. I believe the case is called Carter versus Kentucky, which abolished that practice in the United States, which it should have been anyway under the Fifth Amendment. But yeah, it's a very different, and like we've seen that with all the free speech cases too, where people are kind of looking at how things run in the United Kingdom, and Americans see it and they're just shocked, right? Saying, "Oh my God, what do you mean?" If you call someone, if you're walking down the street and you see a fat person and you go, "Hey, fatso," you can be arrested for that. Like, how is that real? You get all kinds of stuff like that in the criminal justice system as well. You can be held for days without charge. In some countries, it's weeks without charge if it's a terrorism investigation, which is not without being presented for an arraignment. So there's no habeas corpus, not as we would recognize it. There's all kinds of stuff all throughout the police. They can search your house without a warrant necessarily. If there are various reasons they can do so, there's no exclusionary rule if they search your house unlawfully. It's only if the introduction of the evidence, I believe, would be substantially unfair under the circumstances. And generally speaking, their lower court judges are like, well, the evidence tends to inculpate the defendant, and therefore it's fair that we include it. So there's all kinds of stuff like that. It's not very pro-defendant.
Oh
compared
yeah, if you're like at the border, right? Like you're going to an airport or something. In the UK, they can ask to see your phone and for you to unlock it. And if you refuse, if you simply refuse, they will charge you under the Anti-Terrorism Act.
I
And
think
this is
In
what
the
happened to
US,
Paul Golding.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
better.
it's not better
It's not much
here.
better, right? In the US, it's the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the port of entry.
I think Lawrence
if
Southern got
you're-
in trouble for that.
I want to say it's like if you're within 120 miles of any port of entry, you're technically subject to search. Theoretically,
So if you're within 100 miles of a port of entry,
100.
you're subject to search if they have probable cause to believe that. So it's not like like an immigration officer can come just like knock on your door, be like, "Hey, I want to rifle through your shit, and see if you've got a bale of marijuana in your basement." Like if they have probable cause to believe that something which is within their competence, right, an immigration violation is taking place, then if you're within 100 miles of any port of entry, they can effectuate a stop and conduct a search for the purposes of doing an immigration check without a warrant. And I think that's basically, it's if you're out and about, I don't think they can do it within your home. So like if you're driving a car, for example, within 100 miles of a port of entry, which is where like 80% of the US population lives, and or US land border, that's the kind of thing where they could stop you and they could perform an immigration search, but they're not going to be getting into your house without a warrant under that particular rule. But in the UK, yeah, they have counterterrorism legislation. If you don't unlock your phone, there's a key disclosure law. So if you don't disclose the password, I think it's up to 2 years custodial sentence that you can get for failing to disclose the password. They can do.
It happened to Tommy Robinson before.
Yeah,
before
well, it happens all the time. I mean, everything's happened to Tommy Robinson at this point.
Paul Golding had a 6 months stint in custodial sentence. He was in prison because of that.
Well, I think a better example of like the border stuff is David Miranda, who was, I think he still is married to Glenn Greenwald. I don't know. That's I'm not too familiar with Glenn's personal life, but David Miranda was through with some documents that I believe he'd received from the Guardian newspaper, which is a newspaper in the UK, and he was stopped on the basis of counterterrorism laws. But like, it was not a terrorism issue. But they didn't. Right? They
used the law.
Yeah, they used the law. They had the power. They used it. And they used it for very non-terrorist purposes. Just like after the Southport riots, they've been using the terrorism laws for non-terrorist purposes because the laws are so over broadly drafted that they can. So it's crazy stuff.
It is, yeah, and that needs to be revoked. I mean, I know people who've been personally affected by this whole thing, Paul Golding being one of them, Tommy Robinson the other, right, and a handful of other people who, for all intents and purposes, are not terrorists. They are simply dissidents who are speaking out against the Starmer regime, and this is what is being, used against them. They are being treated like as if they are criminals, even though they're not really, not in any logical sense of the word.
Yeah, I think when we say things like I'm not exactly a fan of the UK Labour Party. I think that's a fair description of my political opinions. But it's not really fair to say this is a problem with the Starmer regime. This problem is
even before, yeah.
This has been going on.
The Tories did this too.
It's been going on nonstop since. Honestly, there was one case in 1999 which went the other way. It was called DPP versus Redmond Bate. What then happened was this thing called the Human Rights Act got enacted over there, which incorporated the European Convention on Human Rights into domestic law, and it had some very overbroad language about restricting free speech in particular in that country. Even though if you look at like free speech issues in the UK, you can go back to the 30s. There was a case where someone ran onto the court at Wimbledon and threw a bunch of pamphlets in the air protesting against God knows what. I can't remember. It was first year of law school. And that was outrageous behavior that would have been protected speech in the United States, but got, Public Order Act 1938 or 34. I can't remember what the Public Order Act was enforced back then. So they've had this problem for a long time. But what you've seen is after the Human Rights Act came in 2000, and then particularly after the internet became a big deal, so people started speaking their mind in a very public way that was capable of mass dissemination and also easy review by the police. They just ramped up enforcement, probably I would say 100-fold, where you'd see maybe a couple of dozen cases or maybe low hundreds of these cases a year in the early 2000s, and you would never hear about it, right? I was living there at the time. You'd never heard about this stuff. Now you've got 5,000-6,000 cases a year. You've got 500,000, warrantless searches of people's internet records per year. So they got the power, the internet happened, and then they really just started running away with it, but it was a problem under Labor under Blair. It was a problem under Brown. It actually became an even bigger problem under the Tories, particularly under Theresa May. And then it just continued accelerating under Johnson, and it's just continuing to accelerate under Starmer.
Now it's like 3,000 cases a year for hate speech alone. And when they talk about hate speech, they're not even talking about, hey, let's burn down a building. They're talking about a teenager who says the N-word on Instagram as part of singing a song or something.
But they're talking about J.K. Rowling stating basic facts about human biology.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And
They actually, I know a couple of these women, right? They're speaking out against the trans movement, and they have been arrested by the police for this.
Yeah, and I think, and you've got also these things now. They've got a whole they also have this weird extra legal stuff called non-crime hate incidents and antisocial behavior orders. And so what happens there is you don't get any due process at all. The sort of mark against your name goes on a criminal record background check, and it's non-appealable. So what will happen is if you apply, so for example, you want to become a lawyer, you've got to go and do a CRB check to go get your criminal records disclosed. Let's say you said something offensive online or let's say you said something offensive, period, online or elsewhere when you were in college, and someone reported it to the police, and there was no evidence that a crime occurred. There was no case to be answered, but they had to record it in a database somewhere in Scotland, which is where I went to school, right? I undoubtedly, I would have gotten in trouble if I had decided to go to Britain today for university. I'm sure that I would have had at least one or two dings just because I was 18 and an idiot when I went to school and said stupid stuff. So when fortunately, 20 years ago, there wasn't that, we didn't really have too much of a problem about that. So
there's an equivalent of this in the U.S. It's like the Title IX stuff in colleges. There's no due process for it.
Yeah, I think Title IX is really problematic because there isn't due process. I think we'll probably see some reform of that under Trump.
I hope so.
But it's just the thing that gets me is just it's politics infecting things that 20 years ago there wasn't a whole lot of politics, right? The government has decided that it wants to do micro-policing, and microaggressions are one thing. This is micro-policing. They're devoting substantial human resources to basically act as an HR department with guns. In order to ensure that people don't offend other people. And we had that in the UK, and we continue to have that in the UK. And in the US, I think we got really close, right? And you still have other federal bodies like the EEOC and other groups like that have the power to destroy companies if they don't sufficiently police this kind of stuff within their own businesses themselves, or destroy universities if they don't police that kind of conduct themselves. But the theme overall is that the government just likes nitpicking over what people say. And if you happen to stand out enough, right? If you happen to say something which is offensive enough that you get someone within this giant, armed HR bureaucracy angry with you, they'll make your life a living hell for years and years and might throw you in prison. And it's just, it sucks because I remember a time when this didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the British, Elon Musk is tweeting angrily against Keir Starmer. He tweeted, well, I guess it's not angrily, as it's actually tweeting quite poignantly. He's saying, in the UK, serious crimes such as rape require the Crown Prosecution Service's approval for the police to charge suspects. Who was the head of the CPS when rape gangs were allowed to exploit young girls without facing justice? Keir Starmer, 2008 to 2013. Yeah, he needs to go.
I mean, that's a very interesting fact.
Mm-hmm. He needs to go, man. Starmer needs to go.
He's not gonna though. He's got a majority of 400, and under their system,
I know. I don't think they're even going to have elections.
I mean they'll have elections in 2029. I think the question is.
It's a long time from now. Yeah.
Yeah, but the question is, the question in my mind, there's only one answer in terms of which party has its head screwed on straight, and that's Reform. Reform, I'm very pleased to note, actually they mentioned, I wrote a paper 4 years ago on implementing a free speech law for the UK. They actually adopted it in their manifesto, which is fantastic. So they're promising to fix that issue if they get in. They're surging in the polls. And the question is, can they do it? Because I think what we're seeing is that the only thing that works, right, in terms of fixing a country that's broken and bogged down by these huge bureaucracies that have just sucked the life out of everything, is the melee approach. And in order to do that, you need a massive mandate, and you need someone who's really aggressive and has nothing to lose, sitting at the top, prepared to implement that mandate on day one. And it seems, I think Farage is prepared to do it, and I don't think the Conservatives unfortunately aren't, because they just sort of managed the country's decline over the last 5 years and didn't do it. I mean, it could have been, after Brexit, the UK could have been the Singapore of the North Atlantic, right? They could have done so much to turn that country into something amazing, and they just didn't. So
It got worse.
they had their chance, and they just decided they were going to be continuity labor.
And a big part of this, the problem with the UK, like under the Tories, is they did not, divest themselves from the European Court of Human Rights. That needs to go. That whole thing is what is perpetuating the migrant crisis, because it requires them to take in people and not deport anybody.
Do you know why they created the European Court of Human Rights and the European Convention?
Oh, tell me.
I'm happy to. They created it. Sorry, I didn't mean to be like condescending with the question. It's just
No, it's fine. No. I actually want to know.
Most people don't geek out on this shit like I do, so they don't know.
Yeah.
It was created as initially. So talk about like an institution that's been subverted. It was initially created as a legal response to communism in Eastern Europe, and the idea was that you would give so they created all these rights, these affirmative rights, and then what they said is, we're also going to give, in order to suppress, right, communist movements within our countries from exploiting these rights to overthrow our governments, what we're going to do is we're going to create broad derogations to these rights. That's the term they use, derogations, which permit us to deviate from those rights if it's quote unquote necessary for the needs of a democratic society, that we do so. So if you had a big communist movement in France, for example, that threatened to topple the government, the powers that be could just say, you know what, this is a threat to the essential integrity of the state, so we're going to jail all the communists, and that's going to be the end of that. So it was a Bill of Rights that was designed principally for the preservation of government and the continuation of a system of government, rather than a Bill of Rights, which was designed to be wielded by the people against the government. And what we've seen is that's been turned on its head, because now, to be blunt, the communists are in charge. And what they've done is they've used the European Convention as intended. They've used it to protect and continue the institutions of government that they control, and they've used it to suppress dissent, which is exactly what it was designed to do. But back in the 50s, right, they thought, oh, well, we're going to be run by free market capitalists forever, generally speaking, making it a little social democratic. And what happened was, in the 60s then happened, and now we're downstream of that. So as a consequence, it's doing exactly what it was designed to do, right, which is protect the governments of Europe from their own people. But what they didn't expect is that the people would be right-wing. They thought the people were going to be extreme left-wing.
Yeah. Wow. Maybe, maybe their systems are just designed to fail at this point, because, I sometimes think about liberal democracies, and I think about the ways in which they are exploited constantly by tyrants. And I think that perhaps the system just doesn't work.
Well, it's Plato,
Yeah, it's a failed experiment, right? Like, liberalism is a failed experiment. I like saying that on X, and I don't think most people grasp what I'm actually saying, but I mean, I really do think it's a failure, because I live in a place, Dubai, and it's an emirate, right? It means it has a king, essentially, right? It is so much better.
Dubai is amazing because, basically, I love Dubai. I've been there a bunch of times the last couple of years. It's really interesting because you're seeing a lot of tech people from Europe who aren't subject to citizenship-based taxation move to Dubai or Abu Dhabi, because they look at what they're getting in England, for example. I have a buddy who's making probably about, I don't know, 400 grand in England. And he's like, well, I can either make 400 grand in England and give up 60% of it to the state, or I can make 400 grand in Abu Dhabi, and that's going to be equivalent to basically getting paid $1 million in England. So why would he stay? And so people are leaving for that. They leave. It's safe. It's very hot.
Yep. There's a lady walking her dog outside. So, if anyone has an idea. Yeah.
Well, I didn't see too many dogs. I only saw one.
Oh, there's a dog out here. Yeah, the lady's walking a dog, and people love to say, "Oh, it's like a Muslim country; they hate dogs," and that's not true. This lady's walking a dog in front of a cafe. Yeah.
Yeah. The airports.
It really shows it.
The airports are efficient. The country is safe. Crime is non-existent. Yes, you don't have the freedom to speak out against the government, but people are.
Well, who didn't want to?
They're running the place really well. If you're willing to accept, that trade-off, and a lot of people in Europe are, I don't know that I would do it, being American and living in the US. I'm not sure that's a trade-off I'm prepared to accept. But a lot of people in Europe, and if I were English, 100% at this point, I'd be like, you know what, England, thanks a lot. I can either be silenced in England and pay 50% of my income in taxes, or I can be rather less silenced in Dubai and pay 0% in taxes. You run the math on that, and Dubai actually kind of comes out ahead. So, but in the US, obviously you have free speech here, you have Second Amendment rights here. It's my home. So
having guns is fun.
If you leave, you don't get.
It's nice having guns. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
This is like as a hobby.
The UK has arrested more people over their speech than Russia or the UAE have.
Correct. Over the past 3 years, the UK has, I think, 10 or 20 times more arrests over speech than Russia has over the entire duration of the Ukraine war. Let that sink in. And on top of that, the UK is jailing people for years on end when it comes to these speech offenses. In Russia, they send you to jail for like a day for this stuff. Like, I know some people who protested early on, and they got a day sentence. That's it. Slap on the wrist. You're just like, hey, don't do that again. Okay.
So I did go back to the conversation that we were having about discovery, because you mentioned interrogatories, and that made me think a little more about AI and how having like AI assisted client side document management would be fucking incredible, right? Like, if your clients could just automatically assemble all of the relevant documents that are responsive based on the RFPs that you feed into the model, like that would be a game changer.
Yeah,
as well.
And they just run it locally, server side on their own machines, pull all the data. You get a CSV file with everything in it, and then you just have an application, and you basically just hand the other side, I don't know, invite them into a VDR or something. It's like, cool. You could get discovery down from, a year, right, and $5 million to a couple of hours, and you just say, listen, this is our best efforts discovery where we've run the AI program. This is what it does. Here's the code. We would want to I think you'd want to open source it, but not open license it, so that the other side can inspect it. And just say, here's the code, feel free to take a look at it yourself. This is what we did. Here's the log, which shows the process we ran. And you could then it'd be great. You could spit it out. You could create a disclosure log, right, in a PDF format, just like a letter, which you could show a redaction log. You could have a privilege log. You could do all of that stuff automatically in a half an hour instead of doing it in a year. It's a brilliant idea.
You could sell that shit to every single government agency. Every single one.
Or you could sell it. You could sell it to every freaking large company that gets sued on a regular basis. I think if you did it with Facebook or Google or Apple or X or anybody else, here's the amazing thing: you won't have to build it because an AI is going to build it for you. So you could just basically instruct an LLM, "Hey, go build this." It'll build it, and then you could just go run it. And then go, hey, here you go on the other side. So I'm not sure you can sell that necessarily, but someone's going to figure out a way to build it. And it's going to law firms are going to get absolutely wrecked. They'll just review the output and double check, right, any exceptions that the software identifies as a maybe, and that'll be it. But the whole thing will be integrated rather than having a team of, 50 paralegals and 10 lawyers and then a couple of partners. It's a great idea.
I saved a shitload of money this year by running stuff that was discovery just through AI, and then having my attorney look through the stuff that was actually relevant instead of having them spend all their fucking time looking through all the discoveries.
I mean, if you can guarantee that you're not excluding relevant information, your attorneys will thank you.
I was actually, it's funny you guys bring this up. I was talking about this today with my wife. I'm a deal lawyer, right, by trade. And you just think about all of the work and all of the training and basically all of the version control, right, that happens on that side of the business. And it's the same in the litigation side of the business. Just tracking what you've done and tracking how you've presented it to the other side. And AI could just do that so well, create all of the logs, keep it updated, keep everything organized. It could automate, as information's coming into the company at the same time. If there's anything relevant there, it could automate that, disclose that. It's like having a super brain that reads everything and does that paralegal level check for you. I've got to believe that AI is already that good if you could code up an application. they could do it. But like once we're getting a little closer, and who knows when we'll hit AGI, right? Probably, I think 12 months is not unreasonable to expect. But at this rate, but like if that happens, great. Like you've got basically a partner level 10x engineer that works instantaneously and can produce engineering output, at 300,000 times faster than a human being, sitting there managing your document disclosure process. Like it's going to be so easy. One thing I'm worried about actually is that because of AI, it's like we think like as a result of this, oh yeah, sure, like need for legal work is going to go down. I wonder whether the opposite is true, because I like, as I said, I grew up in a law firm. I currently run my parents' old law firm as a solo. And I remember looking at like loan documents back in the day, like from the 80s, right? They were not as big as they are now, right? Because people had to type things on typewriters, and then you had to make redactions in whiteout. So I remember when that was happening, not because I was doing it, but because I was living in a house with two people who had to do it that way. And when they were trained, they had to draft documents in triplicate, right? So it was white paper, yellow paper, pink paper, and then they would write something out or type it up, and then that's how you made multiple copies of the same document. So what you saw as those processes advanced, right, as technology advanced to manage those things, the documents actually got bigger. So loan documents were, very short, 10, 15, 20 pages maximum in the 60s. You get to the 80s, and they have computers that can suddenly do things like, model cash flows for residential mortgage portfolios with 30,000 loans in them. All of a sudden, your documents explode in length, right? Your prospectus alone, which is the sort of offering document you provide to investors, goes from being 300 or 30 pages to 400 pages, 500 pages. And so my wonder is that, like, is AI such a good producer of legal bullshit that what will wind up happening is you'll just have more lawsuits, you'll have more input on documents, people will negotiate them harder. So you'll be looking at like really weird, like 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000 edge cases when you're negotiating a software contract, which right now we just kind of ignore because they're like, well, of course that's never going to happen, right? Like, or it's such a minimal risk that we'll deal with it when we get there. So I wonder if just like, because it levels the playing field and gives everybody equality of arms, people are just going to try it on more and say, screw it, doesn't cost me anything to file a lawsuit, so I just will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once any think about every random person who has ever threatened to sue one of your clients and done nothing, and then think about them having access to AI drafted complaints and being able to just file a lawsuit whenever they want. Then it's just a matter of paying filing fees and being willing to be a jerk.
Yep.
Like,
I would sue so many people for
wave
defamation.
Well, in the first wave, that's going to be people that are just using AI as well to parse through holes in contracts that companies that basically aren't using AI at all, and those people are going to win pretty quickly in some of those situations, and that's going to hurt. They'll create situations where they can figure out where they can win in them, and then boom, I think it's going to create kind of a definitely more lawsuits before there are less situations.
I also wonder whether we're going to.
it's going to be LEV, like legally extractable value. I don't know.
That's a good play on MEV. I like that. I think that's. I had a thought. Yeah, there was a company called Do Not Pay. Anybody heard of them?
No.
So it was a company founded, a Silicon Valley startup, funded by some big names, run by a guy named Josh Browder, who is the son of a guy named Bill Browder, who's a prominent, I think he's a fund manager, and he's a very prominent critique of the Putin regime. That's like his thing. That's his extracurricular activity. And so they ran around saying they were the world's first robot lawyer. And initially what they did is they automated flows for contesting traffic tickets and like negotiating airline discounts. So if your flight was late or something. So instead of going onto the airline website, dealing with the chatbot, dealing with the customer service agent, filing an appeal, whatever else, they set up the entire flow in advance. And they said, we're going to let you use our app and you can work through it'll work through the flow automatically. So you'll get your refund for your late flight, or you will get your parking ticket overturned because we will figure out the bases on which you're going to appeal. So they've had a couple of problems. One of them was that I think they got a bunch of bar complaints. And the second one is, I think earlier this year, maybe September, October, I think the Federal Trade Commission filed a Section 5 lawsuit against them for misleading and deceptive trade practices because they described the service as a robot lawyer, when in fact it was like repackaging legal software, but it wasn't necessarily marketing. It wasn't necessarily like involving a lawyer in the process. It was just saying, listen, tick these boxes, and this is just like having a lawyer look at it. What AI does is it puts that as a general, like, because the general purpose LLM has all of the knowledge necessary, or will eventually have all the knowledge necessary to perform a legal task, which is fundamentally about interpreting what somebody's saying, looking at a process, researching the applicable laws, and then producing an answer, and then potentially also producing the correspondence. You're not going to have that problem for like ChatGPT, right? Because ChatGPT doesn't mark itself as a lawyer, doesn't hold itself out as a lawyer. It's just a general large language model, which isn't representing that it's going to be your lawyer. But like, as I said, with my issues with Italy, it's amazing, right? How good this stuff is in getting you to 85% of where you need to be. And then you can fill in the last 15%. And eventually it's going to get you to 100%. And soon it's going to be 100%. But, you know, if you're drafting a complaint, they're going to upload every single complaint that's ever been written in the history of law on every single court database. And it's going to be able to draft a complaint with the correct case references, you know, that's procedurally correct. And it's going to be able to assist you in walking through that process, managing your deadlines, you know, managing your filings, all that sort of stuff. So like directionally, that's where this is going. And it's going to result, I think what we'll wind up having to do is do something like Section 230, which is, it's a law which confers immunity on interactive computer services for the content posted by their users. And it's really useful because it means when someone comes in and tries to sue your social network, right, they turn around and say, hey, someone said something, someone defamed me on your social network, someone said nasty things about me, or, you know, your social network is downranking my service, and so I'm losing business as a consequence. Social media companies and other companies like the New York Times, through their comment section, for example, have been able to raise this as a shield and say, listen, Congress made a policy decision that you can't sue us for providing this functionality. I think we'll probably need that, for AI services. We definitely need a Section 230 for AI. And I had a proposal for that. I pinged to a buddy of mine who's over at A16Z Crypto. We had some chats about it, and it's very early days, but hopefully that'll go somewhere eventually, and I think it should. And I think possibly what they'll do is they'll just say, listen, there's a whole bunch of nonsense lawsuits that we're seeing get filed in various different fields. Maybe they'll increase the thresholds, right? And they'll say, listen, you want a jury trial, the amount in controversy is going to have to be $10,000. And if it's a $20, $30, $50 dispute, you're just going to have to take it on the chin, because what's happening is people can now file lawsuits for $0, which means suddenly it makes sense to have $50 disputes, which usually it doesn't.
I was just sitting here thinking, with all those lawsuits that could easily be filed, and the amount of time for lawyers being reduced, the interesting thing that would be increased is the backlog at pretty much every judiciary across the country.
I don't think our backlogs are so much a problem. I think this would actually be really interesting in places like Rwanda, where they have enormous judicial backlogs because they don't have enough lawyers. So in Rwanda, for example, a lot of the lawyers were of the sort of upper social caste, the Tutsis, and so as a consequence, a lot of them got killed, and they didn't really have much of a judiciary for 10 or 15 years after the Rwandan genocide, and they still kind of don't. So there you have long case backlogs for, and so, like South Africa has the same problem. I'm reliably informed by people I know down there. And so what you could do is you could actually reduce those backlogs, and you could add a huge amount of judicial capacity so that those judicial systems start to function at all, when really at the moment they're not functioning. So it could kind of relieve, in places like that, I think it could relieve a lot of misery that the legal system inflicts on people. In the US, like, backlogs are backlogs, but in practice, if it's like complex litigation and you have some kind of dispute, you don't want to get it resolved quickly. It's like, whatever, like, we'll have our initial hearing in like a year and a half and we don't care, and we'll just do some pretrial motion practice or whatever it is in the interim. Like, you don't want to like immediately rush to the courthouse because you buy time to settle. You want to see what the other side's got in discovery. You want to see if there are procedural orders that you can get against them that make their position worse than yours, blah, 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 all that kind of jazz. And so hopefully you settle out. But like, I could definitely see that in places like sub-Saharan Africa, being really, really useful for both, providing a resource, because like they don't have, tons of law libraries. There's not like Westlaw, I don't think, spends a lot of time in sub-Saharan Africa saying, hey, we're going to go categorize your legal research and sell you $3,000 a month subscriptions to go, to go access your cases and things like that. So like potentially interesting there for relieving that. Legal systems.
I'm loving this conversation, Preston, actually. So
Me too.
don't say sorry.
Digging it.
Good stuff.
My mom worked on a project a couple of years ago. It was with Liberia, and they were doing a case digest, basically a single book, where they were going to record every single. This is in 2008, so this is almost 20 years ago. And initially, someone
Holy
said,
shit.
"Yeah." So this was
20 years ago, 2008. That's crazy to think about. Oh.
Well, I'm to say that, Preston. You made me feel old all of a sudden. Goddamn.
Well, 17 years ago, so it's not so long ago.
This is bad.
So she was working on this project, and she teamed up with she ran an NGO, not one of like the NGOs that tries to censor Americans, but one of the NGOs that actually tries to like promote human freedom around the globe.
Okay. You can keep your teeth in order and stay pristine, cute, white, smell good. This is the second time I had to get braces because I lost my fucking retainer. And I was getting ready to do the Smile Direct Club. But something happened with the Smile Direct Club where they shut down or some bullshit. So I was just like, what the fuck? So I just went and got
Law system works is you have your statutes, right? You also have general common law principles, and then you have cases which apply those common law principles in particular instances. And sometimes, if a higher court opines on a particular fact pattern in a particular way, you get a refinement to the rule, right? So what happens is, if you say, all children must go to bed by 10 o'clock, right? And then a court says, well, you don't have to put your children to bed at 10 o'clock if the Doctor Who marathon is on, 4 times. On one of the 4 occasions when it's on a year, there's a specific exemption. What happens is, and then the lower court rules that way, and then it gets upheld by a higher court. Any court which is bound by the higher court's decision is then also bound, right, to follow that new rule. So you would have a new rule which says you must put your children to bed at 10 o'clock. However, if the Doctor Who marathon is running, then they can stay up late, right? So that's how it's all very iterative, and the way that it works, it's designed to, embrace new fact patterns and new principles over time that the system might not have considered. It assumes that there's some imperfection in the way that the legislator comes up with the rules. But if you don't know what the cases are, and you don't know what the holdings are, you don't know what the rule is. So you don't have a consistent legal system. So the project was to just like condense all of this stuff into a single book. And I think it took like this law firm, 100 lawyers, like 2 weeks to do this. It was pretty impressive. And then they produced it, and then it West, yeah. And then, but like that's when you throw hundreds of lawyers, at it 8 hours a day, and say you're going to get full credit for it for doing 8 hours of pro bono work, lawyers jump at that. So that's.
Preston, I'm actually very happy you're here tonight, because it was I don't know, some point today I was sitting around thinking about the how law's not very dynamic. I've actually been thinking about that for quite a while, actually. But how law is just not very dynamic. It doesn't really fit being able to be working. It doesn't work in a subjective manner, right? It's supposed to be cookie cutter, and then it's supposed to be applied in the ways where it's not cookie cutter in the courtroom, and that's supposed to be argued as best as it can be. And that's, I guess, a little bit where the dynamic feature kind of comes in as much as it can right now, but we don't really have a dynamic enough sort of law. What do you think about like using AI to create not just to write more dynamic laws, but rather for there to be a legal system that's more dynamic, literally, and ever sort of changing based on sort of subjective circumstances intelligently?
That's a good question. I don't think we want to like appoint the AI I don't think we want AI judging humans. I think that's a mistake if we did something like that. What I've found in my practice is that AI accelerates the creative process. So what happens is if you want to create a paragraph, if you want to look at some language and you want to refine it, one trick I have is I say to the AI, okay, here's something I wrote. Okay, fine. And it's like add 5 IQ points to this post, because you don't want to add 10, because then what it looks like is it looks like someone wrote it as like an SAT, like verbal exercise where they take all kinds of complex words and whatever else. And you can see different ways that the machine will interpret what you said and different ways of looking at the problem. Or you can say, consider 5 alternatives to this, right? And then the machine will come back and it'll give you 5 different options, and you'll consider how you want to present what you're writing or something else. And then you'll sit down and you'll draft, right? So it's a way that you can go through the iterative process of writing something. A buddy of mine put up a poll once on Twitter, and the poll was a 3-option poll, right? And it said, lawyers, how many times do you read an email before you send it? Option A, 1 time. Option B, 2 times. Option C, 25 times. Because what you do is you go through it, right? And you're reading it and you're tweaking it and you're moving something and you're wondering, how's the other side going to interpret what I've said? What's a less confrontation? Do I want to be more confrontational? Do I want to be less confrontational? And so you still do that, like if you're using an AI as your assistant. But what happens is it just speeds up that process, because you can say, listen, come up with a less confrontational way to say this. Let me see how it looks. And bang, out it comes. And so you see it, you can then chew on it. And it's probably compressing the amount of time that you're taking to do the process. I would say at least 10x, right? So instead of doing that in 10 minutes or 15 minutes of redrafting, sometimes deleting entirely, trying to draft again, it's just going to present you with the alternative. And you can say, okay, well, this is actually a really good way to put it. I kind of like that. Thanks for helping me draw from the full breadth of human experience to go, create the message I want. So ultimately, you're not I think I've also seen, so I teach law at Fordham Law School, and I've seen some students that clearly have used AI to write their papers. And if you're just relying on the machine to write, and you can't fail them, because it's kind of a dick move. You really, really have to screw up to get an F. But B, you can't prove it, right? You can't turn around and say, well, this is, you wrote a 14-page paper with 14 citations and it looks like it was read by ChatGPT. It's entirely possible that student just looks like they were, that their brain is just ChatGPT 3. And that's what they chose to do in order to write the paper. So you just give them a C and you move on. So it's a useful tool as sort of an augmented legal practice tool. And I can see it being used. I think Grok has been used already. We saw it was really interesting. So when the omnibus bill came out a couple of weeks ago, that the Republicans were going to pass to keep the government open, immediately, right, someone had it analyzed on Grok, and within minutes, right, there were tweets going out, or hours, there were tweets going out. There was a pressure campaign ready to go. People had analyzed relevant pieces of the bill. They pressured it. And it was like, I've never seen this happen. I can't remember the last time that a continuing resolution failed in the House, right? Because of public pressure from the internet.
It was beautiful.
It was amazing. And so, but if you think about it, what is possible now is you could just have an AI, right? And you could just say, hey, AI, how you doing? Yeah, good. How are you? Yeah, great. Listen, could you do me a favor? I need you to constantly read congress.gov, and here is the perspective I want you to adopt. I want you to be an anarcho-capitalist, libertarian asshole living in the woods with your AR-15 and marijuana fields, raising your children with your gay husband, right? Really die hard anti-capitalist. So that's what I want you to do. And I want you to read these bills. And then what I want you to do is analyze them as soon as the text goes public, and then produce a media campaign ready to go out of the box, which I can distribute to my people to either support the bill or oppose the bill. And I want you to present me with 5 different options for doing that. And you could just say, okay, could you do that for me? And the AI gives you a little salute and says, okay, no problem, buddy, I got you covered. You can then have a pressure campaign canned, ready to go, and you could oppose bills immediately, right? As soon as they're up, distribute ideas, have talking points, and you basically got a lobbyist in a box, which can produce in probably, 30 seconds, what would normally take weeks or months and require huge amounts of resources. So what you've done is, again, you've leveled the playing field by allowing people to oppose stupid laws, right? And basically saying, listen, pork and fat and things we don't need and things that the people don't want, that's stuff which can be opposed automatically, instantaneously. And there's a risk that, of course, if you do that too much, Congress will just switch off. But like more likely, I think, is that you're going to find a way that that's going to pressure Congress to do particular things in ways which are receptive to public opinion.
Well, because and two, you can use AI now a lot easier. We haven't really had to see this yet. Probably in the next midterms we'll really see it. Where you can use AI to look back through every vote that a politician has cast to see if any particular issue that you particularly align with didn't go the way that you'd like it to. Otherwise, they might be able to snuff under the radar.
Yep, and it's in every case, what you're doing is you're just presenting. I think ultimately, like the strategy call, right, is something that a human being is going to have. The AI is not going to have any stake in the process. Maybe eventually they will, but a human being is the person for now who has the stake in the outcome of the process. So people who care about stuff are going to have tools at their disposal, which, again, as I said, accelerate the creative process in doing, fundamental legal technical analysis of complex documents and producing concise explanations of those and concise policy responses, which are very finely tuned to their particular political preferences. And so the one way that you can interpret that as saying is that we're saying, oh, we're giving all kinds of bad people a voice, and we shouldn't be doing this because bad people.
No, I mean, I think the interesting thing is, I think it solves a problem that we had in this country with trying to do any form of direct democracy, because the biggest problem with trying to do a direct democracy is it only really works if you have a very educated populace. If you don't have a very educated populace, a direct democracy essentially is just controlled by whoever the fuck controls the information flow, which is a huge problem. So if you have AI that's able to come in and fill the gaps for any person's knowledge, all of a sudden law and politics and things that seem far outside the realm of understanding and reach for most normal Americans, and by all intents and purposes, by most of the elites, would be looked at as, oh my God, they shouldn't touch it because they don't know what they're doing. Well, but now that's, knowledge has been leveled. So now it all comes down to actually, what matters, what are the values. People can actually stick to their values because they can inform themselves in the middle of making a decision when they need to.
Yeah, what's really interesting to see is how the use of AI in this purpose seems to be resulting in a sort of return to common sense across the board. So usually, I was just at the Museum of Modern Art today, and in New York, and suffice it to say, if you're going to go to the Museum of Modern Art in New York, go to the 5th floor. Do not start on the first or second floor, because you walk through it and there's all this weird, like, anti-colonialist, Marxist, critical theory informed, art, and I use that term very generously there. Which, of course, in order to, and as someone who worked, in a university, in order to basically make it in those weird institutions, you have to have this language, which is critical theory, Marxist critical theory, Frankfurt School informed thinking, in order to recite the particular catechisms of that ideology and get your papers published and do all this sort of stuff. What we've seen with AI is that in mainstream political discourse, it has cut straight through all of that bullshit and is just looking at numbers and spitting back common sense about how the world's supposed to work. And so what I suspect is that particular, knowledge and particular expert knowledge for a really long time has been denoted by, certain shibboleths which derive from 1960s post-Marxist thinking in Germany. And what we're seeing with AI is that it's cutting right through it and saying, well, actually, we don't have to think about terms like oppression or this or that. We can just look at the impact. We can look at this particular bill and we can see how much is being spent on, I don't know, fertility research for squirrels, or we can look at, like, or whatever else. Like, you could just look at a bill and you don't have to say, well, no, this is about, like, crime and justice and whatever else. It's like, no, you're spending $100 million on this particular NGO, which does this particular bizarro thing, and we don't want to spend money on that because we don't like it. And it's a much simpler way to do politics, and it's I think going to make politics much more accessible to ordinary people. And ultimately, the legal system is a function of the political system. It's something the political system gets to dictate the terms of. And so if we can change how people interact with the political system, then we're going to have those downstream changes in the legal system too.
I wonder how quickly this can have an effect on corruption in politics and crony capitalism. Because those have been I think the two biggest fucking issues with at least Congress in this country.
I have no idea. Anyone else?
I mean, I was just thinking because they've been trying. The best way I've seen that attempted to be approached is like state level up ballot measures that are like anti-corruption ballot measures and shit like that. But
Yeah, I mean, I
kind
think
of
To stop people from trading in the stock market, first of all, right? Like Congress
that's got to be
people,
fixed. That
senators.
shit's just got to be made illegal.
That shit is insane because you have someone like Nancy Pelosi who is, for all intents and purposes, not doing anything illegal when she attends a meeting with these companies that are making microchips, and then like a day later, right? Or she buys a bunch of Nvidia stock, and then a day after that, announces the bill, right? It's not illegal for her to do
That's
that.
the
Yeah.
sort of thing that like I don't expect Congress to ever to take away its own rights at its own leisure. What I think would need to be happening is that state level ballot measures need to happen in enough states. I don't know how many states. Maybe someone here with enough expertise knows that, but enough states to where eventually there's enough to where that doesn't work at all in elections in this country to where eventually they can't pull that shit off anymore. I don't think you can do it though at the congressional level, given the fact that they'd be voting on taking away their own ability to trade assets. Of course, they're not going to want to do that.
Yeah, they're going to complain against it, and they're going to lobby. They're going to lobby heavily with influencers and argue against it. They're going to hire companies, PR companies to run it.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, and the people that are behind the special interests, I mean, they have all the shit to lose from that happening.
There are also two different kinds of corruption, right? So like there's corruption in like the sense that we use it here in the United States for like general political lobbying and that sort of thing. And then there's like Bob Menendez style corruption where you're selling votes for gold bars and that kind of stuff and selling influence. And overseas, the latter kind of corruption is much, much, much more common than it is here. And
in China.
In China, exactly. So one thing, if you can use AI to eliminate the human beings, not from like existence, but from jobs, in those processes, you can use that. If you can basically get rid of the human beings and the human influence.
Cut through bureaucracy, right? Because like if you look at a lot of Chinese law, like legal cases, a lot of times it's these oligarchs who are buying up politicians, and the politicians are governors, mayors, city councilors, things like that. They'll bribe them with land, or they'll bribe them with money and or business opportunities, and say, "Hey, the city will give you a contract for like $1 billion here if you give me X amount of money or whatever, right? Like a car or something." That's what they do, and when they get caught, Xi Jinping puts them to death. There's a death penalty, and they deserve it.
It's even on like a smaller level. So like there are a lot of places in the world where if you're applying for some kind of license to do business.
Well, like Indonesia, yeah. You apply for a license, you got to pay some money with it, yeah.
You got to pay some money, or you got to take someone out to a really nice dinner, and like you can't, like as an American, like you absolutely can't do that. Those are unlawful facilitation payments.
So, I mean, like, you can. It's just whether or not you get caught is the question.
No, you really can't. But like that kind of stuff is basically because there are humans in the loop who have the ability to slow you down, and if you can basically say, listen, well, and yes, these are jobs programs to a certain extent, so it's going to be really hard to make them go away. But if you can do, for example, tax, for example, and tariffs at borders. When I was working in Rwanda, there was one issue where a guy was he was running an NGO that was importing bicycles for the purpose of providing people with easy transportation so that they could carry water back to their villages to and from, right? Because he said, listen, people are doing this on foot by carrying buckets on their heads. It takes them an entire day or half a day to get some water from a clean water source to where they are. If we can get bicycles, right, from A to B, and have these people riding bicycles, really sturdy, like heavy steel things, you cut down the amount of time that they're going to spend fetching water from 6 hours to 1, right, or less. Yep. And so as a consequence, then and the effort that they have to do, and then they can go and direct their energies to, more productive pursuits, right? Which is like, and it's basic stuff. He was trying to get those into the border in Rwanda, and he's having a huge trouble because basically there were issues with releasing them from one country and entering into another because the guy at the border, decided that he hadn't been taken care of. And so as a consequence, the bicycles weren't entering the country.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've seen things like that happen in the U.S. though. I have, in some, especially in the South. I don't know about other parts of the country, but I know in the South that there's heavy fucking corruption in the city councils there.
So I do think that one of the key sort of keystones, I guess, in an American law that sort of prevents corruption is transparency, like public records acts, FOIA, and other sorts of measures that increase the levels of transparency on government agencies. And I think that AI could probably serve a very useful role in helping to give the public access to government records.
I
Because,
just had a
like,
thought there, Lawyer Cat, as you were saying that, you triggered something in my head, which is I can't think of anything, almost a better use case for AI than being able to look through government actions that the government might want to classify, as secret or top secret or whatever. And normally there's no way to look through that material and do a real audit on it without those people being read into it and all this other shit. Whereas AI wouldn't need to have any of that and could just see, okay, is any of this, not meeting the standard at which it should be to be classified at all. So it should be public information or not. So, I almost think there should be more transparency from that, but go on. Yeah. Lawyer Cat, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, and I think you're right that potentially, at least, if classified documents were implicated in a public records request and AI was able to determine that at least portions of that document should not be classified, then yeah, it could potentially facilitate increased public access to those sorts of records and let people know more about the things that we're curious about that we do have a right to know. Yeah, I'm thinking that the client-side document management AI software, I guess, that I was considering earlier would work for this sort of like public records access thing as well. You would just need to add sort of a level where they would check for any information that needs to be redacted, things that are legally required to be withheld, because that is true sometimes. But then you could automate that process and just really speed it up, reduce costs, reduce potential liabilities by a lot. Really interesting.
I think that's the funny thing is that so many people have been anti-AI because they're it's going to take away our jobs, or no one's going to have a job anymore, especially because it's taking away music. Everything's going to be gone. And in my mind, I don't think that's the case at all. What I think AI is going to do is it's just going to solve a shitload of problems that we couldn't solve for ages. Because humans were getting in the way of that. And then eventually you're going to end up with new problems that need to be solved that AI won't be able to solve.
So if you have the chance, please
or better AI.
Or that too. Maybe quantum AI is Google's trying to go after. Who knows?
Please don't scroll.
That whole conversation back up, but yeah.
It's an arms race. I like it. I mean, we need this. We need development, right? We cannot stagnate ever in anything. I mean,
well, and to think that we've already reached a point of progress enough of intelligence to think that we should stagnate is so arrogant in the context of the universe that we're in.
I like better shit.
I like
better stuff,
It's not even just that. It's how are we so arrogant to think that whatever the fuck it is that we've explored already is enough compared to the entire vastness of the universe, which is 99.9999999%.
If AI solves all of the problems, right, then we're going to find new problems, and those new problems are probably the asteroid belt, the moon, and Mars. And you're going to want humans to do that because otherwise there's no fucking point. So that's the kind of thing where you've got, it's sort of like the Federation, right? I hate to use a sci-fi reference because at least it's not Harry Potter or Star Wars, right? The Federation was yes, we've eliminated need, want, war, all these other things, but people still find shit to do. And what is the one job left remaining? It's to go and be humans somewhere else. and try to go and make stuff better by expanding our dominion over the cosmos. And
What's the one thing
there's
AI
gonna be-
can
there's
never
gonna be
do? What's the one thing that classical, even quantum systems can't do? It's emulate emotions. That's the one thing that biological systems will only ever be able to do. It's a biological function. So I'm not sure, and I'm sure that people have sat around and I've seen it with some, they even have like bionic chips or whatever. They like have these, petri dish essentially brain engineered neuro pathways that they set up, and they're like essentially biological computers, which are interesting and cool, and they have a way of like zapping them or kind of giving them the sort of things that we see in the brain happening. But that's not the totality of human existence. We know that. We know that it's more than just a couple signals when something goes right in our life. There's a massive amount of things that change in our body. So it's very foolish to think that AI or quantum or anything like that is going to come anywhere close to creating what the nature of the universe was able to do over the last 6 million years as far as emotion was able to be. Now, might that be cracked within our lifetimes? Possibly, but not anytime soon.
Yep. I just like, what was I going to say? I forgot. Oh,
Well, it
yeah.
just comes down
So
to feeling, but yeah.
just the development of new technology is so important, even if it's for something as like most people wouldn't even experience this, right? But like if you look at the sound industry, they make speakers, right? And every year they release like a new kind of sound bar. They release a new kind of speaker, new kind of technology. They're using MIMS technology now, which is like vibrations and shit instead of like a regular driver.
You think 10 years ago that the top audio technology, I remember it even it blew your mind, and then now today there's technology that's so much better. It's able to
So much better.
so much further.
Yeah, and on top of that, like if you use like the latest IEMs, they have like all these pressure tubes in there, right? And so they sound like they are able to recreate the soundscape of like a three-dimensional, fully spacious sound inside of your ears. And you have your ears plugged, by the way, but you can hear it sounds really spacious. And this is because of engineering, right? Like the Audio 64 has been doing amazing strides in this stuff, as has what do you call it? Those guys at Bang & Olufsen, right?
Fucking even Apple has, to be honest, but yeah,
even Apple has, it's actually pretty top. Yeah, it's pretty top, right? Like the if you get like the pros, the what do you call it, the AirPod Pros
the AirPod
too.
Pros are fucking awesome.
Yeah,
They're amazing.
they're great.
Spatial audio,
they're cheap as fuck too, like $299 or something. Compare that to something that costs, I don't know, like a Bang & Olufsen from 20 years ago, right? 2006, 2005. Their top of the line thing probably costs like $800, $900 or something, and that sounds nothing at all as good as what is available now for like $100. Seriously, you can get like the cheap Chinese IEMs, and they're making tons of those, right? Like there's tons of different brands there, and their stuff sounds volumes better than anything you could have heard 20 years ago, right? And compare that to like $1,000 headphones from, I don't know, thousands of dollar headphones from the 1980s. They sound like crap compared to what we have now. Seriously, the cheapest thing now is better than anything they ever produced in the 1980s. Okay, like the idea that they used to make things better, not really true.
I haven't tested out yet is because I'm not in the market to buy a car yet. I might be in the next year or two. But I haven't tested out like the Tesla sound system compared to like the Bang & Olufsen sound system, which I love in the Audi. Have you listened to the Tesla sound system compared to that?
No, I've not.
Has anyone on the stage by chance? Because I was wondering about that actually. Yeah, because that's something I've actually wondered about is whether that is something that would absolutely make me just jump on a Tesla if they had got down the sound thing more than anyone else.
Yeah. For me, that's a selling point. That's why I drive a Raptor. Right? It's got like mine has like a Bang & Olufsen in it.
I fucking love Raptors. Oh
yeah, it sounds amazing, right? The music just sounds, oh my god, like this. It's worth the extra. It's worth the extra 10,000 that you pay for it, right? Totally worth it.
And that's the thing. Understand actually,
it's a luxury,
making a decision to drive in a vehicle and not have a sound system that sounds good, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It does not. Yeah, I mean, like the part of driving, right? When you're driving like a high-end vehicle, like a Raptor or a Tesla, and that's high-end, right? Even though it's I'm not talking Lamborghinis here. I'm just talking like high-end for most people, premium cars, right? part of the experience of driving a car like that is the sound system. It's the whole experience of being in a ride that isn't shaky, isn't rickety, and you have like this great music in the background going. Like
Music
that
is like since I was a kid, it's
Yeah.
so much of the driving experience that it's hard to
Yes.
put words to even. Yeah, like I remember
Absolutely
as a kid
right.
sitting in the back seat and like watching things passing by and like looking at them at kind of like the beats per minute almost, like if you will, like boom, I'll
Mhm.
look at this and boom, I'll look at this, and that way it was like sort of making like a transition and making everything kind of go with the music, and I almost drive that way now as an adult, where
Right.
I speed up if the music's
You're in the
fast,
zone.
slow down. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're in the zone when you drive. Yeah, it's a beautiful experience. And if you don't drive, I mean, I recommend driving. Okay, like I'm sure there's some people who just take the bus.
Yes.
Oh, do not take the bus. Like part of driving isn't just the having the convenience of being able to go where you want when you want. It's also driving itself.
But
Yes.
you'll learn so much about humans because there is no fucking place on earth, not even the internet, where you will deal with the raw force of being able to die because of any other fucking human next to you that you've never fucking met
Yes.
before, and
100%.
and because of that, people are such animals on the road compared to anywhere
Yeah.
else. You get the most animalistic and also slow, like building and kind of learning experience. You kind of really learn how you can control, aid, push flows, all sorts of things.
Yep.
The way people
You
move
do.
in traffic.
You learn a lot. You learn physics while you're driving, and you learn to control yourself. You learn not to road rage. A lot of people, they lose control. That's terrible. But it's exhilarating knowing that every single person on the road is driving a weapon, right? And we're all behaving civilly. It is a weapon because all you have to do is allow your intrusive thoughts to get in, and you are killing a family of 5. Okay, like it's that
Think about
simple.
how many times in a day, and I've driven over 3/4 miles. Think of how many times in a day that you drive by people, especially in bigger cities,
Yes.
and any of them could have taken you out, and they didn't, just because
They didn't.
they viewed you as a human. They didn't want you could view it as
Correct.
they didn't want to hurt themselves, but no, there's ways you could take out another car without hurting yourself. And that people aren't trying to do that every day.
No, you learn to trust. And when you live in a high trust society, it's a good thing. The driving society is a high trust society. That's why Dubai has like these amazing roads.
When you said trust, immediately I thought of all the long late night road trips I've driven, across many states from like California to Florida, wherever. And sometimes you'll find like that other car that's going like the same speed as you, and you'll just drive for like, I don't know, 200-300 miles, and you feel like you have a bond almost with that person. You might never even pull over to see them, but you feel like you have a bond with them for some reason. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah.
You're on the same journey, right? You are fellow travelers at that point, literally fellow travelers, right? It's a wonderful experience. There's nothing else like it on Earth. There really isn't. I mean, I'm sure back in the day, people used to ride horses this way, but not quite the same. I mean, driving a car is driving a weapon. You are in control of a weapon, as is everybody else who's on the road.
Although I will say I do get road rage, not in the way of like like acting out people. I get pissed. I get pissed real easy. People just drive stupid. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing on this road?
Oh yeah.
Like, why are you behind the wheel? If you don't know how to, if your intention today wasn't to drive, why didn't you buy a car
It's
that's
because
capable of not, you not.
Yeah.
By the way, y'all, check this
And
out.
the reason you feel that.
So of course, we have Myron, and he got extremely upset at losing the golden check mark for the org and all that kind of stuff, and is now crashing out pretty hard, man. He's cool. There's all kinds of weird things that are going on at the moment. So
I've got a good check his payment. That's what you're saying.
So the thing about driving, and the reason why you get mad at other people for driving badly, is because they're breaking the rules. They're ruining the experience for you and for everybody else on the road. What they're doing is inconsiderate. It is antisocial. It is like spitting in the punch bowl at a party. That's what they're doing.
The funniest things about the road to Ian is that you will find.
This is why we should have it. This is why we should have all the cars. That's why we should hope all the cars just be replaced by robots, because then everything just works very smoothly. The thing that most people have, which is a bit of a problem, is that they like to overcompensate when it comes to safety. So they would look at whatever the speed limit is and go under that speed limit, which is the most annoying thing ever, because you're literally slowing down the fucking economy. Like, that's a big...
I hate it.
That is an absolute fucking problem. It's like I drive a lot.
As much as
So
I hate the fucking towns like Searchlight, Nevada, that fucking like has a speed limit of 25 miles an hour on
it
the
depends.
highway.
Like,
There was 75 miles an hour coming into the town. Like, that's just a speed trap. That's just to fuck you over. There's no good reason.
Speed traps are bad in general.
Yeah.
Like, they piss me off. It's like, why is there a speed trap here? What the fuck are you doing? Let me be efficient, okay? Don't fucking set up a speed trap and then get mad at me when I, break it inevitably by like 5 kilometers or something.
I mean, like various places. I mean, I know they want to meet quotas. Yeah, I mean, I know where they want to meet quotas for however many fines they want to collect. But realistically speaking, I mean, if you want to benefit the economy, you want to make sure that people are able to get as fast as possible from point A to point B. Like, most of the time when you're traveling on a road, you're not traveling because you want to travel. You're traveling because you have to travel. It's a bit of a different thing. You want to be over with this as fast as humanly possible.
That's
It's actually something that I see with a lot of
when
countries.
I find people on the road and I'm like, why are you driving so fucking slow? Do you have nowhere to go?
No, like even on a weekend where like people just drive for the sake of driving, and it's like the slowest fucking shit ever. It's like, dude, I mean, I don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense. And even if you have like places where the speed limit is extremely low, even though it's like a straight road where there's no chaos at all, like even if there's no farmland next to it or anything where there could be animals that come out, realistically speaking, like very low speed limits are also a bit of a problem because you're literally slowing down the economy to the point where it is literally nothing.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, well, and the worst crime of all, which is that you're stealing people's time from them. Now, maybe in the future it'll be less of an issue because you can be in your car and it'll drive a little bit for you, and so you can do as much things as you want to in your car as you want to. Even as today you can kind of do that. That's not my point. My broader point is that the system as it is set up very much to just fucking rob you of your time because there are literally older generations that sit around and are like, well, and it's that weird human effect of like, if you see someone else getting something that you didn't get to have with the same effort that you did, well, you want to take it from them. That you see in classrooms, you see on the road with that shit, where they're like, oh, well, how dare you go faster than me? I'm older than you, and I wasn't able to go back that fast when I was your age, or whatever the fuck, where that thinking is. And I've seen it. I've had plenty of friends that are like in their 70s and older, and been around plenty of people that are like that. And there's like, people driving fast. And it's like, it's just because you're old. And you don't like it. The people and everything is doing
Dude, hang on a second. Dude, what's you're getting a little over hyper there. You okay? What kind? Are you on something? Because like that's a little.
No, it's just it's
a little much.
Topic that gets right under my skin because I've driven so much. I drive so much, Adrian. Like
Jesus
most
Christ.
Of the time, I don't look to be on this space on like in the car, but because I have a son now.
Yeah, I mean, legit. Are you on something? Because like there's a lot of I don't know, man.
Energy.
Like I drink a lot of coffee, and I understand what unhinged kind of like sounds like, but you're not able to create that kind of effect unless you're on something. Like, what did you take anything?
No, I swear to God, I'm not anything. I swear to God.
Okay.
Like I would just say if I was.
Okay.
I actually like to drive really slowly, and the reason why is because I adopt the same attitude towards public roads as I do to public transport. And that was basically, I flipped a guy off once who was like cut me off, and he didn't like it very much. I was like 18. And so he didn't like that very much and like tried to kill me, which wasn't ideal. So at that point, I just basically viewed the road as like the same thing. So what I do is I just set the autopilot at like 65, chill in the slow lane. And like, that's fine because like that way, anyone who's a dick and needs to get somewhere quickly, like I have exactly half a second of interaction with them when they're passing me. I get to my destination feeling pretty good because I left autopilot on and like, I'm just chilled for most of the ride. And it's like low hassle. And I think the hassle is only, for me, it's not the time. It's like getting to the destination and feeling strung out that bugs me. And so AI cars in particular, I think will really take the edge off on that point.
So, I mean, like there's some roads in America where it is just like.
Wait, did somebody actually try to run you off the road?
Yeah, I was getting on I-91 in Hartford, Connecticut, and some guy like ripped past me, pulled in the other lane. I was just like asshole, flipped him off, and he and his girlfriend, I could see them fighting over the steering wheel in the car.
Oh my God!
He attempted to run me off the road.
Somebody tried to run me off the road once. Like somebody tried to run me off the road once. I was like on a passing lane, And this absolute fucking idiot was traveling under the speed limit on the passing lane. So I thought, okay, so I'm going to use the other lane to kind of like, get ahead of you, given that you're like, are going under the speed limit anyways. And then this fucking guy tries to like come over to the side. I hit my brakes real quick, fucking hit the swerve and just could block it. He like tried to get the front of the car. It's really kind of funny. And people try bullshit like that sometimes. It's like they have they want to use a car as a weapon, which makes no fucking sense. And I knew exactly who that was, by the way. And I met him a bunch of times on the road. And whatever I do, I just like look him dead in the eyes out of the window and smile. I'm like, yay! Because I recognize the car.
Knew who it was?
And he's like, since he has like kind of grown to ignore me, because whenever I like see him, it's like, oh hey, yeah, it's been like a few years. Yeah, it's been a few years at this point. And there was the other time where there was a guy who kept running red lights. This is the funniest thing ever. There's a guy who kept running red lights, but he was really dumb, as in he doesn't quite know how to drive properly, like in the curves and shit. So like there's a very specific way that you can drive when you're dealing with curves. And if you don't drive properly, then you will have to drive extremely slowly within a curve. So like you, it's difficult to explain. I don't know. I just kind of do it. It makes it work, and I can actually travel at a pretty decent speed, but relatively higher than the average without slipping off the road at the actual speed limit itself. So this is what most people don't actually understand how to do, because they don't understand that. Like, because for instance, with brakes, it kind of works this way where you want to hit your brakes before you enter into a curve, and then actually apply a lot of force, as in with acceleration when you're in the curve, but not too much, of course, because otherwise you're also going to still slip off the road. Because a car, when you hit the brakes, many people have this dumbass fucking idea that they hit the brakes while they are in the curve already, and then they start slipping off the side of the fucking road. So the problem is you're basically having a force that wants the car to go sideways and start rolling. Right? That's the thing that happens when you hit the brakes. You want to have more force that tries to pull you forward, which is the reason why you actually want to hit the speed just a little. Don't hit too much, because otherwise you're just simply going to lose control and you're going to skid off the road anyways, just for a different reason. But mostly it's just like, you don't have any fucking grip anymore. It's just like a centrifuge at this point, right? So there are limits to this too, but you're able to actually get past a curve a lot faster than the average person without you actually slipping off the road. And so I'm able to do that very well. Even though this guy ran multiple red lights, I was able to still catch up with him. And it was on a passing lane. My engine was better. and I was able to get past him. And then this guy was like blinking and doing all kinds of weird shit and trying to like get me to pull over. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this dude? And like, I don't fucking understand that, So then this guy pulls over somewhere. I pretend to pull in behind him, but really what I'm doing is I'm speeding ahead, pulling up right next to his ass. He's trying to like, do this thing where he wants to explain his position. And I told you, you dumbass mother. I told him something along the lines of, you little bitch ass motherfucker. You ran multiple red lights. Go fuck yourself. And I just drove off. He didn't even bother to follow me.
The thing about traction, they don't teach it. They should absolutely teach it to drivers.
Absolutely.
They actually teach it in motorcycle classes. So basically they say, listen, you have a fixed quantity of traction on your two wheels. Right? And anything that you do, you accelerate, you brake, you turn, like eats into how much traction you have. And if you go over that amount, you're fucked. Like you'll get a high side flip and you'll get thrown off your bike and it's no good. So like, that's a really good. And so when you were talking about taking the turn, what do? Do you just try to like flatten it out so it's more of a straight line? And so you take the turn a little tighter and just kind of try to make it a straight line rather than following the curve all the way around and shorten the distance?
Yeah, but try to make it as straight as possible because it like maximizes the grip. Sometimes you really don't have that much of a choice, but realistically speaking, it is more so about how much you can pull yourself forward, just like the acceleration, right? It also depends on what car you have. If you're like, four-wheel, it's a lot better. But yeah, that generally works out for me quite well. I haven't slipped off any roads yet, so that's pretty cool. Even though technically speaking, I drive relatively fast, though still within speed limits in some places, especially if there's like water on the road, it becomes a bit of a risk. Actually, it's kind of funny. I was like once traveling on this road, and I was like trying to get to a destination somewhere, and there are like these curves, and there's signs everywhere that actually tell you at what speed did you have to go within a very sharp curve. It's like a lot of sharp curves, right? And so if people don't obey the speed limit, because they actually have to in this sense, you will slip off, especially if there's like water everywhere. And people don't understand that. So what happens is I actually saw 2 accidents back to back where people were losing control of their vehicles. They crashed into the side of they crashed into the the rails, the guardrails. So
Yeah.
And traction control, the reason why I know about traction control this way is because I did do a lot of off-roading, or do a lot of off-roading whenever possible. And one thing you will notice is that if you don't get your shit together properly, you'll start slipping and sliding everywhere. And if you're doing, like, say, mountain pass travels, there's valve, which means if you fuck up, you're dead.
Oh, that's bad.
It's a good incentive, actually. Not gonna lie. So
It is. Yeah, you gotta be careful. Last thing you want to do is die.
wow, what else is going on here?
Oh, I'm just looking at sound bars.
I'm looking at the Tony Robinson thing because like there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now.
What happened to Tony Robinson?
Because he's in jail, isn't he?
Is he?
Yeah, he was jailed on, was it terrorism charges? I'm not sure if that's
He was
accurate.
jailed on, I think in this instance, he was jailed on contempt charges, because there was some, I'm not overly familiar with the facts, but there were some individuals who were the subject of his reporting. I think there was like an active case, and I could be completely wrong, but basically he published, and this is again a free speech issue in the UK. In the UK, you are not permitted, the courts can basically prohibit the publication of any information about a pending or ongoing judicial proceeding. And this applies both to like independent reporters, mainstream media.
It happened to Tommy Robinson.
It happened to Tommy Robinson, and like it happened with there's a case called PJS. Because I'm an English solicitor, I'm not actually allowed to say who it is, which was a famous case, which was widely reported on in the United States, but and everyone in the UK knew who it was about, but you couldn't, if you were in the UK or subject to the jurisdiction of the UK courts, you couldn't actually say anything about it, and I believe you still can't. So like they have this weird regime where you can't talk about cases, and they do this. They say it's because it's for fairness to the defendants. I think it's largely for political reasons. And he fell foul of one of those restrictions, and in a very deliberate sort of way. And as a result, he got a custodial sentence. So it's not a terrorism issue. It is a free speech issue, but it's not like your usual kind of like it's not like he made a stupid post on the internet. It's that the UK government seeks to, and the judiciary in particular, seeks to very tightly control reporting on political proceedings, which of course we've seen, in political proceedings, judicial proceedings, ongoing police investigations. They don't like people looking into those and doing public reporting while they're pending. Both, they say it's for the defendants, but I think there's also a political component to it too.
But they detained him under the Terrorism Act. So it was one of those things like we were just earlier, where they used that as the jurisdictional hook, like, oh, we can get in here, now we can arrest, and then they can charge with whatever.
By the way, did you guys see that there was like a mass shooting in New York City?
Really?
What?
Yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah, at least 11 people have been shot in Queens.
Night
Yep, the Amazon nightclub.
Okay.
Oh my
So it wasn't
fucking
terrorism,
God.
it's just a gang thing.
Dude, it's barely like a day into 2025, and this shit's like taking off left, right, and center.
Look this up.
Welcome to the year of war.
New York City. Okay.
There's a guy named Rudyard Lynch who's he's like 22 or 23 years old, but he's actually really well read and an interesting, he's an interesting historian and history hobbyist on YouTube. And he had an interesting prediction. So he's very familiar with like Strauss-Howe, cycles of history, all that stuff. I'm not sure how scientific that all is, but he said that in the next 6 months in the United States, and he made this prediction like concrete just before the election. He said there would be 1,000 deaths in the United States due to political violence in the first half of 2025. Because he said that the cycles of history were aligning a certain way. Trump's victory was doing certain things. He was looking at parallels like the Days of Rage from the 60s and the 70s, the Weathermen and all that jazz. And so his thought on this is that there will be a massive uptick in low-level political violence in the United States, given that there's a big political change happening and people are just going to go nuts. So Interesting thought. I'm not sure whether it's right or not. I'm not an expert in that sort of field, but I thought that was an interesting tip.
Do we know anything more about this mass shooting? I mean, is this like in France in 2015 when that mass shooting happened at nightclub, or is this like more of a gang thing, or rappers beefing when it happens? Do we know?
I mean, it's a nightclub in Queens, which rather suggests that it's not political. Because
Okay.
I don't think nightclubs in Queens are especially political.
Right, because like when it happens in Miami or Orlando or it's like some rap bullshit, right? Yeah.
Well, no, but like you had the Pulse shooting.
True, that was a one-off
in
though.
Orlando.
But in general, though.
Yeah, but in general, I think the thesis is that you have violence like is a strange critter that can pop up in different ways and manifest itself in different forms for different reasons. So you could just have like a general breakdown of respect for law and order. I can't remember who. I wish I remembered the name for it. There was an interesting graph in the book version of Carl Sagan's Cosmos. So Carl Sagan did this series that Neil deGrasse Tyson then sort of repackaged a couple of years ago.
Destroyed.
And there was a graph in it which showed the occurrence of violence as a curve, right? And saying you can expect violence to happen at certain levels of death will happen at certain time intervals over time. And if you plot that out over time, eventually you get an event. It's an asymptotic curve, and eventually you get an event which wipes out the entire human species, and we don't know where that is, right, on that particular curve. And so I think with political stuff, you're maybe moving the curve up or down or in or out, depending on how you plot it. And so I think that's what Rudyard's thesis was, not necessarily that it would be political violence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Al, did you remember like we had this one of our like 3, 4 a.m., maybe even 5 a.m. calls that we sometimes have because we're crazy. And I said, this year is going to be a year of war. Remember when I said that?
Yeah.
I didn't realize how accurate that was because I realized, dude, it's going to be, I said initially it's a battle of ideals, and I was correct in that. I just didn't think it was going to be like this. So,
yeah.
Well, fuck us, I guess.
Yeah, this is something else. Hopefully this isn't the rest. Hopefully this isn't how the rest of the year goes.
Yeah. I assume there will be a few instabilities for sure, but yeah.
More than a few.
Personally, I would highly recommend that people stay away from various crowded areas, nightclubs, all that kind of stuff. Large gatherings.
Unless they're in Dubai, in which case
yeah. Like if you're inside of the US, I'd highly recommend that you stay out of places where people get intoxicated quite frequently. Make sure that you are in your house at a very specific time. Specific time as in not too late because it might get dangerous beyond a certain period of time. That kind of stuff because you can't leave anything to chance. I mean, like these types of areas that are under attack, it always seems to be something where people gather. So I would say, for myself personally, I would stay away from those areas specifically. Now, given the fact that I'm one of those people who's extremely isolated from the public, that's a very easy thing for me to do because I'm always in very specific places where if I have to be, I don't really enjoy myself by being part of a large crowd that I don't know. I actually don't go into large crowds that I don't know in general. Right, so I'm a very, very intimate individual, you could say. Unless it's in a space, for instance, that's about as good as it gets because there's no physical risk. So, yeah, that kind of stuff. I generally tend to stay away from massive crowds because I can't predict what the fuck happens, and people are crazy and they're going to do all kinds of weird shit. And besides, even if you go to concerts especially, I wouldn't go to any concerts this year. Until everything calms down, I wouldn't go to any concerts either. Actually, I've never been to a concert because I just don't trust it because
Me too.
you ever hear these talks about stampedes and things like that? It makes sense because at a certain point, what happens is humans act like a fluid almost, right? The sense of self within a large mass of humans is lost. And what happens then is that it's more so, something that you can predict via fluid dynamics if anything else. Like crowd management itself in concerts is actually extremely complicated and very interesting. It's very scientific as a matter of fact, because you want to prevent certain things such as crowd crushes and such from happening. And so, and people are, so say for instance, there's this one incredible clip that I've seen where somebody just, out of nowhere for shits and giggles decides to, pretend rowing a boat, right? So it sits on the ground, starts rowing, Then one person joins in, then 2 people join in, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20, and it just keeps expanding. Then everybody's fucking rowing there. Now let's imagine if one person gets panicked and another person gets panicked. And this is very easy. This happens quite often. For instance, one of the best ways to demonstrate this is there's absolutely stupid fucking pranks where these people sit in like cars, they're about to eat something, and then one person just screams for no fucking reason whatsoever, and the other person screams as well. So you're just like emulating the other individual's panic because that's just kind of your survival mechanism, right? So if you imagine that in the setting of a concert, then that will spread like wildfire. And once that happens, everything will act like a massive herd of wildebeest. At that point, it's like, hey, we're going to look for the closest exit, and we're going to squeeze through that, and it's going to be like people trying to be rocket fuel, which doesn't work. Okay, so that's going to destroy everything. It's like people are literally going to die because the amount of pressure and the amount of people that are trying to squeeze into this tiny little opening are going to literally squeeze all the fucking air out of you and the ability to actually respirate. It's fucking insane. So personally, I don't go to concerts. I don't see the point of doing that because I just don't trust large masses. I just don't trust that. I can't. Maybe at some point you'd go to like a rock concert or something like that. Maybe, I'm thinking about doing that. It's like one of those very well organized ones. But realistically speaking, I don't really get the appeal.
I want to go to the Sphere.
Yeah, the Sphere is okay. I can gel with the Sphere. The Sphere is good. Yeah, that's
why
right.
super packed, and they limit their intake and everything. So it's,
plus the cost is also relatively high. So the chance that anyone's going to do some dump there is relatively low as well because it's just like the very
like $1,000 or something to get in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that. I'm not sure. You probably have to get there this time.
That is worth it, right? I mean, you're paying for that high quality experience.
Exactly.
And you're not paying to be with a.
So it's a very high barrier to entry. No one's going to try to pull a political statement in there. The chance of that is extremely low because if you're already going to spend like $1,000 on a ticket, I mean, what's the chance that you're going to do shit like that? Normally they don't afford it. So I would say probably for places like that, it's all right. But personally, like for lower level, very easy to access events, fuck no, not going there. Also, another thing that I would highly recommend people to do is like, this is for this year, I think we should be super principled and super clean. So all of us here, I don't want anyone to watch any porn for the rest of the year. That's number one. That's where we're going to start with this. We're going to start with like this religious cult shit. Okay, we're going to do this. Every single person here, if you'd like to participate, nobody watches any porn whatsoever. Even if it's a fucking sex tape from a celebrity, you can, and you should in fact, fade that shit. Because I don't want to see another fucking dude's ding dong just because everybody's fucking obsessed with it. Like, what's wrong with everybody? Why do you have to know? I don't need to know. You don't need to know either. What's that going to do for you? You're going to like pass that knowledge on to somebody else? Does that have any utility for you? I doubt it. I doubt it. And if this is the type of stuff that you have to watch in order to gel with your friends, then I suggest you find different friends because that shit is not sustainable. All right. You can talk about hyena pseudopenises. Okay, that's a bit of a different story. That's fucking science. Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing I recommend doing
there's this great
is 15 push-ups. 15 push-ups every single day, at least 15. Try that shit. At least 15. Try variations if you'd like, but the bare minimum, even if you're like sick, try 15. Depends on what kind of sickness you have as well.
I feel so bad for the hyenas.
Yes, yeah, hyenas.
Me too.
God really shafted those creatures. Yeah.
There's this great scene about you mentioned
the koalas are the worst, in my opinion. I think koalas. I don't want to be koala. I'd rather be a hyena with a pseudo-penis needing to give birth through it than be a fucking koala. At least I'll have some fun and I can. Hey, no. At least I still get to eat meat. Okay, koalas have to eat this super poisonous dog shit that's like growing on the fucking tree that likes to burn.
Let me tell you why everything you're saying is horseshit. Imagine, right? You're a dude and you have kidney stones, right? We all know, even if we haven't experienced it, how fucking awful the experience of kidney stones is, right? Yeah. A child is significantly bigger than kidney stones.
Have you ever taken like a foot-long shit before?
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
I got 2 days ago. I got a colonoscopy without anesthesia or painkillers, and that shit really hurt.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Wow.
Bro just comes in with
that's what I was trying to figure out with the colonoscopy.
Anyway,
why did you get a colonoscopy?
Point is, right? Imagine birthing a child out of your dick. That's gonna be painful as fuck. There's no fucking
Here's the
way.
thing.
I
Here's
would
the
rather
thing.
be the koala.
No, here's the thing. The koala is an infinitely shittier existence. At least the suffering of giving birth through a pseudopenis as a hyena, as a female hyena, if you do in fact turn out to be one, if you wanted to be a hyena, is less bad, it's temporary, than the fucking koala that has to eat these fucking disgusting leaves from a eucalyptus tree. Leaves, by the way, that are so terrible for the thing that's eating it that it's not even the best thing to eat. And besides, why the fuck would you be a koala? Those things are literally retarded. Why the fuck would you be? I would rather be a fucking hyena in a pack, ripping apart the occasional gazelle, getting in my fucking proteins, all that kind of good shit. Okay, if I so happen to be a female hyena and I'd have to give birth through a pseudopenis, fucking I'd take that shit any day over koala. Fuck koala. I'm not being a koala. It's like you gotta choose. Do you want constant medium level suffering, or do you want temporary high level suffering that represents a very tiny fraction of your life? That's how you gotta kind of measure it out.
So first of all, koalas may actually like eating eucalyptus leaves, and hyenas may enjoy giving birth. They probably, if they dislike it, they probably wouldn't.
I don't think they enjoy it.
Planet. Well, but hold on. So going back to the porn thing, I found this quote from Donald Trump, which I found very interesting. He was interviewed by Howard Stern, and Howard Stern is like talking to him about masturbation, and he's like, "Hey, do you ever watch porn?" And Trump is like, "No, I don't watch porn." And beyond that, Trump also says that he literally never masturbates, and that I found very fascinating. So, all right, so I don't watch porn. Porn is horrible for your brain. It's horrible for you. It's horrible
Melts
for
your brain.
But what about masturbation? That's an interesting question.
But Trump is married to. He's only ever been married to supermodels. Why? Why would he do that?
Exactly.
Great point. Adrian, what's your take on that with masturbation? And I can explain why I got a colonoscopy.
I think I agree with your post, which is that he has some very interesting lifestyle choices. He likes to party. He
doesn't drink.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't. But he doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't do drugs. Right. But also he lives entirely off of fucking McDonald's and Coke.
Yeah.
I'm honestly
And he
surprised
eats
that
his
he's
steak
lived as
well
long as he
done.
does. I feel as though okay, so here's the thing. I look at many people that otherwise do stuff to their body, which doesn't make any sense, and yet they live incredibly long. And one way to think, I mean, look at this guy. He's basically Donald Trump is consuming probably some of the worst food that you can imagine. It's literally disgusting in some way. If I were to eat a McDonald's burger right now, I could literally feel it affecting my body. I can literally start feeling it. I will have an immune response type of shit going on. My body heat starts going up. I start sweating, and I feel very bad.
Our bodies have adjusted out of that.
Yes.
So you have to recognize that, right?
Exactly. Like before it was a little bit different. I could actually eat that shit. Would be no problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, that story. I ate 6 Big Macs, drank 2 liters of Coke. The Coke that's not diet, by the way. Okay, that too was with the sugar, and I gobbled that shit down, man. Okay, I'm a masterful eater. Okay, I am a black hole for snacks. I am a snack hole. Okay, I have an insanely active metabolism. Either way, right? This guy is doing a lot of things to his body that are not healthy. So you gotta ask yourself, how is he still alive? I think there's a certain will that you have to have if you want to stay alive. You know what I mean? Like, do you have this desire to persevere? Yes. For instance, I'm going to give an example. If somebody, it's not just like you're doing good or anything like that. If you have a very long-term mission in mind and you dedicate every single breath to this mission, then it seems that this level of perseverance keeps you alive more than it keeps other people alive, because this purpose is so great, you would literally consider yourself working after you've even died. That's how it feels in your own brain. So if you consider something, a great example would be, Elon, for instance. He keeps going, right? And then to an extent, even because he's extremely old, look at George Soros, right? That guy's insane. You know, he's done a lot of
You guys are
terrible
interesting.
things, so you can't say that, doing good has helped him a lot, because he doesn't. But, in a sense, this guy has a lot of drive. Right? He has some sort of mission in mind, and he wants to achieve that mission. So that guy has lived a very long time, and still continues to fucking live, because I think that he has this type of, this will to live. The same thing even with my great-great-grandmother. As a matter of fact, she used to have a farm, and when she was moved out of the house where the farm was at, because the house was crumbling, into, a little bit more of a modernized place where there was no farm, she just basically lost the will to live and died soon thereafter. So this is a very interesting thing. If you have a specific purpose in life, you will keep going endlessly. And she was like
Like, if you have
crazy, by the way.
pets,
Her
right?
partner died like 20 years, up to the point where she died. Her partner died like 20 years ago, and she had been living alone. Which is like, okay, so loneliness was not the thing that killed her. It's just basically the absence of purpose. The absence of purpose will literally have you die. There's this thing where, technically speaking, you're supposed to be, you're both living and dying at the same time. So you're like essentially half alive, and the idea is to be more alive than dying. So if you look at something like that is the imbalance of where you feel yourself dying more than you're actually living. Right? You ever heard this term? It's like, okay, everything feels like it's dead, or you feel like you're dead inside. Or you'd say, hey, you do something that's exciting, you feel like you're actually alive, right? You're trying to basically balance things out, but you're trying to shift the balance a little bit, mainly to feeling more alive.
Animals die, right? Like pets. Of course, animals die, but I mean, when you have a pet, or an old person who has a pet, like a pet dog or a pet cat, and the old person dies of old age or whatever, right? It has a heart attack, dies. The animal will go soon after, like within a week.
Yeah.
Literally within a week. Yeah, my uncle, he was super close to my dog that he had basically kind of adopted from me, right? He's a Rottweiler, but perfectly healthy, not that old. And my uncle died. He had pneumonia. He passed away. And within 1 week, the dog died. Yeah, he was just sad. He would just constantly just sit there by his door, where he used to be, and go by his chair. And then one day he just didn't wake up. Yeah, that was it. He just died of sadness.
I see a lot of guys who retire, like they retire and then they have a big celebration. They go whatever, they buy an RV, they get a boat, particularly in the law, and then like they're dead in 2 years. It happened, like you see it so often in our business, and it's like guys, it's just like, don't do it. Like, die with your boots on, because otherwise what'll happen is you'll just slow down, you'll get off the treadmill, and then all of a sudden you'll just stop. I agree with all that.
Like getting into fucking retirement, you have like nothing to do. I generally don't see myself ever like stopping at anything.
I can't retire ever.
The problem is, if you stop, there's this thing, objects that are in motion like to stay in motion. So if you stop at all, it's going to be very difficult to get those objects back in motion again, right? Because it was so
100%.
difficult the first time around.
I think Trump actually. I think Trump as well said this. He's like, he talked about how he knew people that kind of took a holiday, and then when they tried to come back, and they never managed to do so.
Yeah, never came back from it. Died.
It's like when you quit a game for a very long period of time and you come back to it, so it's never going to be the same.
You have to restart it. You got to restart it completely. I always restart it.
I used to speedrun. I used to speedrun Super Mario.
Yeah.
Now I can't speedrun it.
I used to play a lot of Star Trek Online, and I can't even remember some of the shit that's in there. I have like so many items in my inventory, and I already know that all of that stuff is important for something, but I just don't remember what. So, and it's like,
good luck.
All of that stuff is gone. So if you think about your brain, it's kind of similar in this sense, right? So, for instance, I think one of the problems behind why many old people don't understand how to use modern day technology is because they just simply stopped advancing at a certain point, right? So I think if you genuinely want to put yourself through a particular thing and you want to keep learning stuff, then you will keep basically learning. So you're going to be like in your 80s or something, and you're going to play like Path of Exile 5 or some shit. It's like that's what's going to happen. I'm still going to be massive fucking gamer, dude. Well into the future.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm going to play like the fucking.
So here's if you know anyone who's old and they're in the trades, right? Like they're tradespeople, right? And they're still working well into their 50s or 60s or whatever, you'll notice that they're actually good at computers. Like they're actually decent at using this hardware, right? Like the stuff that we use, it's pretty intuitive for us, right? You compare them to like the old people who, that you have to teach how to use a fucking iPad. And it's like, what the fuck? Why do you need to teach anybody how to use an iPad? It's pretty intuitive. And yet a lot of old people who have retired, they don't know how to use it. It'll just basically struggle. But the people who are still working, if they're doing a trade, if they're like a hairdresser or something, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Or if they're doing like woodworking or something, they'll get it. They'll understand it. Like for them, it's easy. It's like us for us because we're working age. It's easy for us to pick something new up because our brains are constantly functioning.
Which direction the causality is going. You don't know if the type of person who seeks out continuing to work is also the type of person who can learn these things. It's not necessarily caused by them continuing to work.
The drive is, like there's a certain, like people who like working, like us. I would say everybody on stage enjoys working. We love what we do. There's a drive to learn new things. So maybe that's it. I don't know.
Okay.
Could just be both things,
I have another thought about Trump. It could be both things. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Very likely
what
both
about
things.
Trump playing golf every Sunday?
Yeah.
Do what?
He does that.
Do what every Sunday?
Plays golf.
Oh yeah,
golf.
Trump is very good at golfing.
Yeah, he's like almost a pro.
He's a scratch golfer. Like he's really, really good.
Yeah. He could actually be a pro because if he decided to take the presidency off for like 3 months or something and actually practice and play nonstop, he would probably win the PGA. He could play at that level, 100%.
Meanwhile, Elon is like maxing his digital gaming.
He's very much like Elon. Yeah, like if Elon got into golf, he would probably be a PGA champion. He would. Yeah. If you go into chess, he'd be a grandmaster. No problem. That's the kind of people that we're talking about. They're that next level of human. Trump could probably be a grandmaster at chess if he actually cared to play it. If you wanted to.
No. You have to start very early. No. For something like that, if Elon would have started like age 8 or 9 with like chess, then grandmaster is possible. But before that, no.
With chess specifically,
He's 162 on the leaderboard.
Chess specifically, people start to reach their peak at 35. Right. So
it's a bit different, right? Because there's like the learning curve is requires you to be really young to get into it.
It's not just the learning curve; it's also
the physicality of your brain.
Yeah, the physicality of your brain. Once you, if you look,
that's weird.
If you look at all of the world's best chess players, you'll start to notice, like, all of them start to hit their peak at mid-30s. That's their peak. After that, it's kind of slowly downhill. Right. So for something like chess,
but you don't. Yeah. I'm really, really good at chess. Like I can beat all you guys at chess almost.
No, you can't. No, you can't. We got Suraj here.
I'm gonna tag it. Suraj over here is gonna wipe the floor with you in ways that you've never thought possible.
Suraj is literally
okay. Let's dance.
Suraj,
let's dance, bro.
Do not underestimate this guy. Okay, he's the super officer.
Suraj has a certificate from FIDE, the official chess.
Let's dance, bro. I'm really good at Blitz.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to do chess.com?
Okay, hold on. We all need to watch this.
Yeah, we do. We got to watch this.
All right.
Okay. Do you want? Okay. I'll send you guys link DMs.
Molson is already in the server.
Cool.
All right, look, hold on. I need 5 minutes to get back to my house, and we have to specify the time control and like how we're gonna play this.
Right.
Hold on, let me turn my cheats on.
So Blitz, it should start from
This guy.
So let's play 960 and Bullet.
No, you said Blitz.
You said Blitz.
That is Blitz.
Yeah, Blitz, which is like starts from 3 minutes to 10 minutes, right?
Nah, Bullet is under Blitz. Bullet is better because you just said you were going to turn on your cheating thing, and it's harder to cheat at Bullet.
Turn on my cheating? I mean, why would I cheat?
He was joking. He was joking.
Oh.
You said you were doing it, but it's a joke.
Oh, okay.
But I prefer Bullet, and I feel like everyone watching would prefer Bullet too because it just goes faster.
No, I think Blitz is better.
Yeah,
You can-
I think
you
Blitz
can-
is
Okay,
better.
then
You can-
if
you can
Blitz
have-
is better. Stream
You can have
the max. I will not play
you can
longer
have
than
3-minute Blitz.
I have a question. How the fuck do I link my my code for Discord?
What do you mean code?
I mean, like my user account. Like, how do I tell people what it? I don't know what it is.
That's the best part.
Just
Doesn't matter. I sent you a DM, Ian. You can get them
Yeah.
right there.
yeah. You can.
Okay.
So Siraj, I'm an old man. I'm past the 35-year-old. Absolutely dominate. Man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't play chess as much these days, so I mean, I think you have a chance.
No, come on, Siraj, don't undersell yourself.
Well, I'm
I don't
walking
know.
back
I don't
to
want
my
to
home.
embarrass
Once I get
myself.
there, I will-
He's 2200. He's 2200.
Well, you guys don't know what I am, do you?
I highly doubt you're 2200.
I'm not 2200, but I am really good at Blitz, and I can play chess blindfolded,
what's
so I
your-
have some
what's
talent.
your- Really? What's your Blitz ranking?
I don't know what it is on chess.com, but on like LI chess, my 960 is in like the 1900s.
Wow, that's really good.
All right. Okay.
So that's probably
And my Blitz is like 21.
That's
I think it's
probably
21.
okay.
I don't remember.
So that's probably close to 1900, 1800, something like that in real FIDE chess.
But I'm also like fucking nuts, and I rise to the occasion, and I'm getting really amped right now. So, and I'm not sure Siraj has that in him. So, I'm pumped for this.
Should be good. This should be good.
Be good.
This should be good.
Okay,
All right.
everybody.
So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna switch over to that, and then you're gonna see a live stream probably pop up in a little bit here. I think I'll end the space here as well, and then continue again tomorrow. And then you're just gonna see like a random stream pop up on timeline. That is going to be us going live there. Yeah. What do you think? Good plan. I think it's a
Good plan. I think it's a good plan.
All right, cool. Yeah. Everybody, make sure to tune in again tomorrow if you're just here for Spaces. It starts at 7 p.m. Central every single day. Tomorrow we're going to cover even more topics than we did today. Today was a bit of a busy day for me, so I wasn't able to be as present as I usually am, but I definitely will be tomorrow. So, anyways, thank you all for coming. It was absolutely fucking fantastic. We're going to have the stream pop up in a little bit, so we can have a little bit of a 1v1 chess match situation coming up, so that's going to be really fun. But yeah. Make sure to subscribe to me if you haven't already, and follow my co-host, turn notifications on for me, and we shall see you again tomorrow. Have a wonderful night.